They said a mother's lullaby could soothe any wound. Krista Bass's mother sang one every night, the same melody her grandmother sang, and her great-grandmother before that. But the night her mother died, she pressed a cold amulet into her daughter's palm and whispered, "Never let them see this. Never let them know what you are." 20 years later, holding that same amulet in a castle she was sold to, Krista finally understood. Some heirlooms aren't gifts. They're curses waiting for the right moment to awaken. She was born wrong. Wolfless in a pack of shifters, barren in a world that measured worth by cubs. Cast off, discarded, forgotten. But the night they dragged her to the Alpha King's castle to try anything to save his dying wolfless son, the pendant her dead mother left her began to burn against her skin. Turns out, being broken was exactly what made her dangerous. Chapter 1. Sold to save a dying prince. The rope burns on Krista's wrists had stopped hurting 3 days ago. Now they were just another scar to add to the collection, physical reminders of every way she'd failed to be what her pack needed her to be. "Keep your head down," her father, Bernard Bass, hissed as the iron gates of the Thornwood Royal Castle groaned open before them. His fingers dug into her shoulder, not with affection, but with the desperate grip of a man trying to squeeze worth from a worthless stone. "Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't look anyone in the eye. And for the love of the moon goddess, don't mention that you're wolfless," Krista finished flatly. "Barren, rejected, worthless. I know the list, father. You've reminded me every day since Lester cast me aside." Bernard's hand cracked across her face before she could flinch away. The taste of copper flooded her mouth, familiar and almost comforting in its predictability. Pain, at least, was honest. Pain didn't pretend to be something it wasn't. "You watch your tongue," Bernard snarled, his eyes flashing amber, the wolf rising just beneath the surface. The wolf Krista would never have. "Alpha King Raphael Thornton is giving us a chance. Giving you a chance. Every healer in the 5 kingdoms has tried to save Prince Todd. Every remedy, every ritual, every prayer to the moon goddess herself. Nothing has worked. The prince is dying, and if you can't do anything to help him, then you're no daughter of mine." Krista wanted to laugh. She hadn't been his daughter for years, not since the night of her first shift that never came. Not since the pack healer examined her and declared her womb as empty and useless as her wolf. Not since Lester Carlson, the pack's strongest warrior and her fated mate, looked at her with disgust and spoke the words that still echoed in her nightmares. "I, Lester Carlson, reject you, Krista Bass, as my mate. May the moon goddess have mercy on your defective bloodline." But she didn't laugh. She just touched the amulet hidden beneath her threadbare dress. The one piece of her mother that Bernard hadn't been able to sell or trade away. It was warm against her skin, as it always was, a small comfort in a world that offered her none. The castle courtyard was chaos. Servants rushed past carrying steaming bowls of water and bundles of herbs. A woman in healer's robes emerged from a side entrance, her face pale and drawn, shaking her head at the waiting guards. Another failure. Another day closer to the prince's death. This way. A tall man in royal livery appeared before them, his nose wrinkled in distaste as he took in Krista's appearance. She knew what he saw. A thin woman with tangled dark hair. Wearing a dress that had been mended so many times it was more patches than original fabric. Her feet were bare and dirty from the 3-day journey. She looked exactly like what she was, a desperate father's last gamble. "The Alpha King is waiting." They were led through corridors that gleamed with wealth Krista couldn't fathom. Marble floors polished to mirrors. Tapestries depicting great battles and legendary wolves. Chandeliers dripping with crystals that caught the light and scattered it like fallen stars. Everything was beautiful, cold, and utterly foreign. Bernard walked with his chest puffed out, trying to look like he belonged. Krista simply tried not to trip over her own feet. The throne room doors swung open, and Krista's breath caught despite herself. Alpha King Raphael Thornton sat upon a throne of black iron and silver, his presence filling the vast chamber like a storm barely contained. His hair was more gray than black now, she noticed, and the lines around his eyes spoke of sleepless nights and impossible choices. But his amber eyes still burned with the power of his wolf, still commanded respect and fear in equal measure. Beside him stood a woman Krista assumed was Queen Inez, elegant, beautiful, and utterly devastated. Her hands twisted in her lap, and her eyes were red-rimmed from crying. "Bernard Bass." Raphael's voice rolled through the chamber like thunder. "You claim your daughter has abilities." Bernard shoved Krista forward, and she stumbled, catching herself before she fell flat on her face. "Yes, Alpha King, she She has a gift, from her mother's bloodline. Ancient healing magic, passed down through. He's lying, Krista said quietly. The chamber went silent. Bernard's face turned purple, and she could feel his rage radiating behind her like heat from a fire. But Krista was so tired of lies, so tired of pretending. She was going to die in this castle, she could feel it in her bones, and she refused to die wrapped in her father's desperate fabrications. I have no gift, she continued, raising her head to meet the Alpha King's eyes. It was forbidden for someone like her to look directly at royalty, but what did it matter now? I have no wolf. I have no ability to bear cubs. I am, by every measure of our world, worthless. My father brought me here because he heard you were trying anything to save your son, and he thought perhaps even a broken thing like me might be worth a few coins. You insolent. Bernard lunged forward, his hand raised to strike her again, but Raphael lifted one finger and 2 guards appeared, restraining Bernard with ease. Enough, Raphael said, his eyes never leaving Krista's face. You have remarkable honesty for someone in your position. Most would lie, claim powers they don't have, just for a chance at royal gold. I'm going to die anyway, Krista said simply. Might as well die honestly. Something flickered in Raphael's expression, surprise perhaps, or a grim sort of respect. He stood, descending from his throne with the fluid grace of a predator. You're right that we've tried everything. My son, Todd, was born wolfless. Like you. For 19 years we've searched for a cure, a remedy, anything that might give him what the moon goddess denied him. 3 months ago he became ill. Whatever held his condition in balance has broken, and now he's dying. Every healer says the same thing, his body is trying to shift, but with no wolf to shift into, it's tearing him apart from the inside. Krista's hand unconsciously went to the amulet beneath her dress. It was burning now, hotter than she'd ever felt it. She pressed her palm against it, trying to soothe the heat. We brought you here, Raphael continued, because there are old texts, ancient stories about bloodlines like your mother's, the Bass family, generations ago, before they fell into poverty. There are whispers of healing magic, of power that works differently than our wolf-born abilities. I don't know if any of it is true, but my son is dying, and I will try anything, even myths, and desperate wishes to save him. I don't know anything about healing magic, Krista whispered. My mother died when I was 10. She never taught me anything except... She stopped, her hand still pressed against the burning amulet. Except what? Queen Ines spoke for the first time, her voice raw with hope and desperation. A lullaby, Krista finished quietly. She sang me a lullaby every night. The same one her mother sang to her, she said. She said it was important, that I should never forget it. But that's all. Just a song. Raphael and Ines exchanged glances. The old texts mention songs, Raphael said slowly. Incantations passed down through female bloodlines, disguised as lullabies and nursery rhymes to survive when magic was hunted and destroyed. My son is in the East Wing, Ines said, standing abruptly. His chambers. He's not conscious most of the time now. The pain is too great. But if there's even a chance... Her voice broke. I'll take you to him, Raphael said, gesturing to the guards. Release Bass. He can wait in the servants' quarters. Now wait just a moment, Bernard protested. If my daughter succeeds, there's the matter of payment. If your daughter succeeds, Raphael said coldly, you'll receive more gold than your pack has seen in 3 generations. If she fails, you'll receive enough to cover the cost of your journey here and not a coin more. Those are my terms. Accept them or leave. Bernard's mouth worked silently for a moment, then he nodded jerkily and allowed himself to be led away. Krista was left standing alone before the Alpha King and Queen, her hand still pressed against the burning amulet, her heart pounding so hard she was sure they could hear it. Come, Raphael said, and his voice was gentler now. Meet my son. They walked through more corridors, these quieter and darker. The opulence faded, replaced by the hushed atmosphere of a sick room. Healers hurried past, their faces grim. The smell of herbs and medicine hung heavy in the air, mixed with something else, something wrong. The scent of a body eating itself from the inside out. The doors to Prince Todd's chambers were massive, carved with images of wolves running beneath a full moon. A cruel irony, Krista thought, for a boy who would never run as a wolf. Inside, the room was dim, curtains drawn against the afternoon sun, and in the center, in a bed that looked far too large for the figure it held, Lay Prince Todd Hawkins. Krista's breath caught. She had expected a boy. The text always said the prince, and in her mind, he'd been young, small, innocent. But Todd Hawkins was a man 19 years old, Raphael had said. And it showed in the breadth of his shoulders, the strong line of his jaw, the masculine hands that lay limp on the coverlet. He was beautiful. Even dying, even with his skin too pale and his breathing too shallow, he was the most beautiful thing Krista had ever seen. And the amulet around her neck burst into flames. Not real flames, she realized that even as she gasped and tore at her dress. But it was burning, searing against her skin like a brand. She ripped it free, the leather cord snapping, and the amulet fell to the floor, glowing with an inner light that pulsed in rhythm with Todd's labored breathing. "What is that?" Raphael demanded, staring at the glowing object. Krista couldn't answer. She was frozen, staring at Todd's face, because his eyes had opened gray eyes, storm cloud gray, and they were looking directly at her. "You," Todd whispered, his voice rough from disuse. "I've been dreaming of you." And then the amulet's light exploded outward, filling the room with blinding radiance, and Krista felt something inside her crack open, something that had been locked away and waiting all her life. The lullaby her mother taught her rose to her lips unbidden, and she began to sing. Chapter 2. When the amulet chose its healer. The lullaby spilled from Krista's lips like water from a broken dam, unstoppable, ancient, and carrying power she'd never known existed within her. The words were in a language she didn't consciously understand, yet her tongue shaped them perfectly, as if her blood remembered what her mind had forgotten. Salvare cor fractum, sanare animam divisam, quod maledictum est, benedicatur quod perditus est, inveniatur. The amulet rose from the floor, spinning slowly in the air between Krista and Todd's bed. Its light pulsed brighter with each word she sang, casting strange shadows that seemed to dance with lives of their own. Krista felt pulled forward, her feet moving without her permission, until she stood at Todd's bedside, her hand reaching out to hover over his chest. "What's happening?" Queen Inez gasped. But her voice seemed to come from very far away. Krista couldn't have answered if she'd wanted to. The lullaby consumed her, pouring through her like she was merely a vessel, a channel for something far older and more powerful than herself. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory, singing this same song, and behind that, her grandmother's voice, and behind that, voices stretching back through generations of women she'd never known but whose blood ran in her veins. Todd's eyes remained locked on hers, wide and storm gray, and filled with something that looked like recognition. His lips moved, trying to form words, but only a soft exhale emerged. Then his back arched, his body convulsing, and Krista watched in horror as his skin seemed to ripple, bones shifting beneath the surface. "He's trying to shift," Raphael said urgently. "This always happens before the worst of the pain. We need to restrain him before." But Krista's hand pressed down on Todd's chest, and the convulsions stopped. The amulet descended, settling against his heart, and where it touched his skin, veins of light spread outward like roots seeking water. Todd gasped, his eyes rolling back, and for a terrible moment, Krista thought she'd killed him. Then he breathed. Really breathed. Deep and full, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm for what looked like the first time in weeks. The lullaby ended, the light faded. The amulet cooled and darkened, becoming once again just a piece of old metal on a leather cord. Krista swayed, suddenly exhausted, and would have fallen if Raphael hadn't caught her arm. "What did you do?" he demanded. But there was no anger in his voice, only awe and desperate hope. "I don't know," Krista whispered. Her throat was raw, as if she'd been singing for hours instead of minutes. That's never happened before. I've sung that lullaby 1,000 times, but never." "Look at him," Inez breathed, moving to her son's bedside. "His color. It's returning." She was right. The deathly pallor was fading from Todd's skin, replaced by a healthier tone. His breathing remained steady and strong. The lines of pain that had been etched into his face were smoothing. And as they watched, his eyes opened again, clearer now, more focused. "Mother?" Todd's voice was weak but coherent. "Father? I'm here, son." Raphael moved to the other side of the bed, his hand gripping Todd's shoulder. "We're both here. How do you feel?" Todd's brow furrowed as if he was taking inventory of his body. "The pain. It's quieter. Not gone, but..." His eyes found Krista again, standing frozen at the foot of his bed. "Who are you?" Krista opened her mouth, but no words came. What could she possibly say? "I'm nobody. I'm broken. I'm the girl your father bought from her desperate father because he's tried everything else, and I'm apparently the bottom of the barrel. This is Krista Bass, Raphael answered when she remained silent. She has a gift. One that seems to be helping you. Krista, Todd repeated, and the way he said her name made something in her chest twist painfully. Like he was tasting it, memorizing it, claiming it. The woman from my dreams. You've dreamed of her? Inez asked, surprised. For weeks now. Ever since the pain got worse. I thought. Todd's hand lifted, reaching toward Krista, and she saw how it trembled with the effort. I thought you were death, coming to take me, but you're real. I'm real, Krista confirmed, her voice barely a whisper. But I'm not death. I'm just the amulet, Raphael interrupted, pointing to the object still resting on Todd's chest. May I? Krista nodded, and Raphael carefully picked it up, holding it to the light. The metal was tarnished and old, inscribed with symbols that seemed to writhe and shift when looked at directly. In the center was a stone black as night, shot through with veins of silver that pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. I've seen these symbols before, Raphael murmured. In the old texts. In the forbidden archives. His eyes snapped to Krista. Where did you get this? My mother gave it to me the night she died, Krista said. She told me to never let anyone see it. To never let anyone know what I was. But I never understood what she meant. I've worn it hidden under my clothes for 20 years. It's never done anything before. Not until she gestured helplessly at Todd. Not until you met my son. Raphael finished. He turned the amulet over in his hands, his expression grave. This is not just an heirloom, Krista. This is a key. And I think I need to show you something. Raphael, the boy needs rest, Inez protested, smoothing Todd's hair back from his forehead. Whatever explanations you need to give can wait until... No, Todd said, trying to push himself up on his elbows. He managed a few inches before his strength gave out. I want to know. I need to know why I'm like this. Why I've spent my whole life feeling broken and wrong. And why she... His eyes found Krista again. Why she makes the pain stop. Raphael nodded slowly. Very well. But Krista stays close. We don't know if the effect is temporary, or if her proximity is necessary to maintain it. They brought a chair for Krista, placing it beside Todd's bed. She sat gingerly, hyper-aware of how close she was to him now. Close enough to see the individual strands of his dark hair against the pillow. Close enough to smell the herbs that had been used to try to ease his pain. Close enough to see the exact moment when his eyes tracked to her scarred wrists and his expression hardened. Who hurt you? Todd asked quietly. And there was something dangerous in his voice, something that reminded Krista that he might be Wolfless. But he was still the son of an alpha king. No one important, Krista deflected, tucking her hands into her lap to hide the rope burns. Liar, Todd said, but not unkindly. I've spent 19 years having people lie to me about what I am. Special, they called it. Unique. Blessed by the moon goddess with a different path. All pretty words for broken. Don't lie to me too. Krista met his eyes, saw the challenge there, the desperate need for honesty in a world that had probably fed him nothing but careful half-truths his whole life. My mate rejected me, she said flatly. My father tied my wrists when we traveled here because he was afraid I'd run away before he could sell me to your father. There. Honest enough for you? Something flickered in Todd's eyes, anger, yes, but also understanding. Kinship. Your mate was a fool. My mate was practical, Krista corrected. I'm Wolfless. Barren. I can't give him what a mate should give. He was right to reject me. No, Todd said firmly. He wasn't. But we can argue about that later. Father? He turned his head toward Raphael, who had been watching the exchange with an unreadable expression. The archives. Show us what you found. Raphael set the amulet on the bedside table and pulled a heavy leather-bound book from inside his jacket so old that the pages cracked when he opened it. 3 months ago, when Todd's condition worsened, I went to the forbidden archives, the locked section where we keep the texts that are too dangerous, too dark, or too controversial to allow general access. I was looking for anything, any legend, any myth, any scrap of hope. He turned the book so they could see the page. The text was written in an ancient script, but beneath it, someone had added a translation in modern language. In the 3rd century of the Wolf Wars, the House of Thornton rose to power through conquest and ruthless elimination of rival bloodlines. Among those destroyed was the house of Bass healers and seers who had served the wolf packs for generations. The last of the Bass matriarchs, before her execution, spoke a curse that would echo through the centuries. You have taken our lives, our lands, our legacy. So too shall we take yours. Every firstborn son of Thornton blood shall be born as you have made us powerless, wolfless, broken. Only through the blood that you have spilled can the curse be undone. Only through the line you have destroyed can healing come. This is my gift to you, Alpha King, may you choke on it. The room was silent except for Todd's steady breathing and the distant sound of servants moving through the castle halls. Krista read the words again, then a third time, her mind refusing to accept what they meant. My family cursed yours, she said numbly. My ancestors did this to you. 5 centuries ago, Raphael confirmed. And every generation since, the firstborn son of the Thornton line has been born without a wolf. Some survived it. Some went mad. Some, like Todd, developed this wasting sickness where the body tries to shift despite having no wolf to shift into. We've hidden it, disguised it, paid fortunes to keep the other kingdoms from knowing our weakness. Because if they knew the Alpha King's heir was wolfless, they'd invade. Todd finished. They'd see us as vulnerable, weak, easy prey. But the curse mentioned blood, Inez said, her voice trembling. Blood of the line that was destroyed. Does that mean? Her eyes went to Krista, wide with horror. No, Raphael said quickly. I researched further. There are more texts, written by scholars who studied the curse centuries later. They theorized that the blood referred to wasn't literal sacrifice, but bloodline. That someone from the Bass family, the healing bloodline, would need to willingly help a Thornton. That the curse could only be broken through genuine healing, not violence. But the Bass family was destroyed, Todd said. You just said they were executed. How? Not all of them, Krista heard herself say. Her voice sounded distant, dreamlike. My mother told me once that her grandmother's grandmother fled the execution. That she was pregnant, and she ran, and she hid, and she passed down a secret through the female line. A song to remember. An amulet to protect. Instructions to never reveal what we were. Because any Thornton who found you would kill you, Raphael said quietly. Out of fear, or revenge, or the desperate hope that eliminating the bloodline entirely might break the curse another way. Your family has been in hiding for 500 years, fragmenting, scattering, losing their power and knowledge generation by generation. Until my mother died and left me with nothing but a lullaby I didn't understand, and an amulet that didn't work, Krista finished. She felt numb, hollowed out. I'm the last one, aren't I? The last of the Bass healers. That's why my wolf never came. That's why I can't bear cubs. Because all that power, all that magic, got concentrated into this. She touched her chest where the amulet had burned. Into healing him. She looked at Todd, really looked at him, and saw in his face the same realization dawning. They were two halves of an ancient equation. His family had destroyed hers. Her family had cursed his. And now, 5 centuries later, they were the last remnants of that bitter war. A broken prince and a powerless healer. Bound together by blood and vengeance and desperate hope. I don't want you to die, Todd said suddenly, urgently. Whatever this curse requires, whatever the healing costs, I won't let it kill you. You don't even know me, Krista said, startled. I've been dreaming of you for weeks, Todd replied. I've heard your voice singing in my sleep. Felt your presence like a promise that I might survive this. And now you're here, real and solid, and looking at me like I'm not broken, like you understand what it means to be told you're worthless every day of your life. So no, I don't know your favorite color, or what makes you laugh, or what you want from life. But I know I don't want you to die saving me. There has to be another way. Maybe there is, Raphael said, still studying the ancient text. The scholars wrote that the curse was never fully understood. That the Bass matriarch's words were deliberately cryptic. Only through the blood that you have spilled can the curse be undone. Maybe it doesn't mean Krista has to die. Maybe it just means that I have to stay, Krista finished. That the healing isn't one moment, one dramatic sacrifice. That it's time, proximity, repeated rituals. She looked at Todd, saw the hope flickering in his storm-gray eyes. That I have to sing to you every day until the curse breaks completely. How long? Inez asked. How long would that take? I don't know, Raphael admitted. The texts don't say. Weeks, months, maybe longer. Then she stays, Todd said firmly. As long as it takes. She stays here, in the castle, close enough to, he paused, seeming to realize he'd just commanded a complete stranger to upend her entire life. If you're willing, he added, softer now. I know you didn't choose this. Didn't choose to be tied to a dying prince and an ancient curse. If you want to leave, if you want the gold my father promised, and a chance to build a life somewhere far from here, I'll understand. But I'm begging, please stay. Krista thought of the life waiting for her outside this castle. A pack that had rejected her. A mate who had discarded her. A father who had sold her like livestock. She thought of the tiny cottage she'd lived in alone, the pitying looks from pack members, the children who threw stones and called her hollow womb. She thought of the slow, grinding misery of waking up every day to a world that told her she had no purpose, no worth, no reason to exist. And then she looked at Todd, broken like her, cursed like her, and looking at her like she was the most important person in the world. I'll stay, she said. I'll sing the lullaby every night. We'll break this curse together. Todd's hand reached out, trembling, and Krista took it without thinking. His fingers closed around hers, and where their skin touched, she felt warmth spread through her, not the burning heat of the amulet, but something gentler. Something that felt like coming home. Together, Todd agreed, and squeezed her hand like a promise. From the bedside table, the amulet pulsed once with faint light, as if sealing a bargain that had been 5 centuries in the making. Chapter 3. Singing Life into Death. They gave Krista a room 3 doors down from Todd's chambers. It was larger than the cottage she'd lived in for the past 5 years, with a bed so soft she was afraid to sit on it. Servants brought her clean clothes, simple dresses in muted colors, but made of fabric finer than anything she'd ever owned. They brought hot water for bathing, scented oils, a tray of food that could have fed her for a week back in her pack. She touched none of it. Instead, she stood at the window, watching the sun set over the castle grounds, and tried to process everything that had happened in the span of a few hours. This morning, she'd been worthless. A burden her father was desperate to be rid of. Now she was apparently the key to breaking a 500-year-old curse, the last descendant of a powerful healing bloodline, and the only hope for a dying prince. It's too much, she whispered to her reflection in the window glass. I'm going to fail. I'm going to do something wrong, and he's going to die, and it will be my fault. A knock at the door made her jump. Miss Bass? A young woman's voice, tentative. May I enter? Yes, Krista called, turning from the window. The girl who entered couldn't have been more than 16, with red hair braided down her back and nervous green eyes. She curtsied awkwardly. I'm Noelle May, miss. I've been assigned as your lady's maid, to help you dress and whatever else you might need. I don't need a maid, Krista said automatically. Oh. Noelle's face fell. I'm sorry. I'll tell the head housekeeper that you don't want. Wait. Krista softened her tone. The girl looked terrified, and Krista knew that expression too well, the fear of failing, of being sent away, of not being good enough. I didn't mean I don't want your help. I just meant, I'm not used to being waited on. I don't know how any of this works. Noelle brightened slightly. Oh. Well, that's all right, miss. I can teach you. The way things work in the castle, I mean. The rules and protocols and such. Would that be helpful? Very, Krista admitted. She gestured to the tray of untouched food. For instance, am I supposed to eat that? Or was it just brought as a formality? You're meant to eat it, miss, Noelle said, moving to the tray and uncovering dishes. The cook prepared extra tonight because the Alpha King said you'd been traveling for days without proper meals. There's roasted chicken, fresh bread, vegetables and cream sauce, and apple tart for dessert. Krista's stomach growled loudly, betraying her. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten anything more substantial than stale bread and cheese. It seems like too much for one person. You need your strength, Noelle said firmly, sounding suddenly older than her years. If you're to help Prince Todd, you'll need to eat properly, build yourself up. You're too thin, miss, if you don't mind me saying so. Krista did mind, a little, but only because it was true and she was ashamed of it. She sat at the small table and forced herself to take a bite of chicken. The flavor exploded on her tongue, rich and savory and so delicious she nearly moaned. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until that moment. How is he? Krista asked between bites, trying to sound casual. The prince. I haven't heard any updates since this afternoon. Noelle's expression brightened. That's the talk of the whole castle, miss. He sat up for dinner. Sat up. He even ate a full meal without getting sick. The physicians are calling it a miracle. They say he looks better than he has in months. She leaned in conspiratorially. They're also saying you're a sorceress, that you used dark magic to heal him. And what do you think? Krista asked carefully. Noelle considered this. I think the prince has been dying for as long as I've worked here, and I think you sang a song and held a necklace, and now he's not dying. So if that's dark magic, then I'm glad for it. The prince is kind, miss. He doesn't deserve what's happening to him. Something in Krista's chest loosened. No, she agreed softly. He doesn't. After she'd eaten until she couldn't manage another bite, Noelle helped her into a nightgown soft cotton that felt like wearing a cloud, and brushed out her tangled hair with patient, gentle strokes. It was the first time anyone had tended to Krista with care instead of obligation or resentment, and she had to blink back tears. There now, Noelle said, setting down the brush. You look like a proper lady. Shall I braid it for sleeping? Please, Krista said. As Noelle's fingers worked through her hair, she asked, What time do I go to the prince tomorrow for the next ritual, or whatever it is? The Alpha King wants to meet with you first thing after breakfast, Noelle replied. He's bringing the royal scholars. They want to examine the amulet more closely and ask you about your family history. Then you'll go to Prince Todd in the afternoon. Krista's hands clenched in her lap. They want to study me, like I'm some kind of curiosity. Can you blame them? Noelle asked, not unkindly. You're the first Bass they've found in centuries, the first person who's ever been able to help the prince. They're curious, yes, but also desperate. The whole kingdom needs Todd to survive. He's the only heir. No pressure then, Krista muttered. Noelle tied off the braid and moved around to face her. You're scared. Terrified, Krista admitted. What if today was just luck? What if I can't do it again? What if whatever power I have runs out, or stops working, or I do something wrong and make him worse? Then you'll try again, Noelle said simply. That's all any of us can do, miss. Try, and fail, and try again. But you won't be alone in it. The whole castle will be supporting you. Me included. Krista managed a weak smile. Thank you, Noelle. Of course, miss. Now, you should rest. Tomorrow will be a long day. After Noelle left, Krista lay in the too-soft bed, staring at the ceiling, and knew she wouldn't sleep. Her mind was too full, her body too wired with anxiety and adrenaline. She kept seeing Todd's face the way he'd looked at her, the desperate hope in his eyes, the strength in his voice when he'd said together. She was still awake when the knock came at her door near midnight. Miss Bass? A male voice unfamiliar. The prince is asking for you. Krista was out of bed, and at the door in seconds, her heart pounding. Is something wrong? Is he? The guard standing in the hallway looked apologetic. He's stable, miss. But he can't sleep. The pain is returning. And he asked if he might come, if you're willing. Krista grabbed her shawl and the amulet from her bedside table, where she'd placed it carefully. Take me to him. Todd's chambers were dimly lit, just a few candles burning. In the great bed, she could see him shifting restlessly, his jaw clenched against pain. When he heard her enter, his eyes snapped open. Krista, he breathed, and the relief in his voice was palpable. I'm sorry. I know it's the middle of the night, and you need rest, but He broke off, gritting his teeth as his body spasmed. Don't apologize, Krista said, hurrying to his bedside. She sat in the chair that had been left there from earlier, close enough to see the sweat beading on his forehead. What do you need? The song? Please, Todd managed. It's not as bad as before, but it's there, under the surface, trying to tear me apart. Your voice, it helps. Krista placed the amulet on his chest, where it had rested before. It began to glow immediately, responding to their proximity. Then she took his hand, he reached for her automatically, desperately, and began to sing. Salvate cor fractum, sonata animum divisam. The words flowed easier this time, as if her body was remembering how to channel the power. Todd's breathing evened out almost immediately, the tension draining from his muscles. His grip on her hand loosened from desperate to gentle, his thumb unconsciously stroking across her knuckles. Krista sang all the verses she knew, then started over, creating a continuous loop of melody. She watched Todd's face as she sang, saw the pain lines smooth away, saw something like peace settle over his features. He was so young, she realized. Only 19. He'd spent his entire life in pain, in fear, knowing he was different and broken and failing every expectation placed on him. Just like her. Better? She asked softly when she paused between verses. Much better, Todd murmured, his eyes opening to meet hers. You have a beautiful voice. Has anyone ever told you that? Krista laughed bitterly. No. Usually when I sing, people ask me to stop. They say it's unsettling, that it makes them uncomfortable. Because they can feel the power in it, Todd said. Even when you weren't consciously using it, they sensed something old and dangerous in your voice, and it scared them. Is it scaring you? No. Todd's answer was immediate and certain. Nothing about you scares me. You're the first thing in my life that's ever felt right. Like a piece of a puzzle finally clicking into place. Krista's breath caught. I feel that too, she admitted. Like I've been waiting my whole life to meet you, which is insane because we only met this afternoon. Maybe not so insane, Todd said quietly. My dreams of you started weeks ago. What if somehow, even before we met, we were calling to each other? The curse trying to break itself, drawing us together? Magic doesn't work like that, Krista said, but even as she spoke, she wasn't sure. What did she really know about magic? About curses and healing and ancient bloodlines? How do you know? Todd challenged gently. We're in completely uncharted territory here. Two people who shouldn't exist wolfless in a world of wolves connected by a 500-year-old curse. Maybe the rules don't apply to us. Maybe we get to write our own. The amulet pulsed between them, its light soft and steady now like a heartbeat. Krista found herself leaning closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. Todd's eyes tracked her movement, darkening with an emotion she couldn't quite read. Sing for me again, he whispered. Please. So she did. She sang until her voice grew hoarse, until Todd's breathing deepened into sleep, until the candles burned low and the first hints of dawn began to lighten the sky. Her hand never left his, and his never let hers go. When Noelle found her there at sunrise, still sitting beside Todd's bed, the maid smiled knowingly but said nothing. She just brought fresh clothes and helped Krista change in the adjoining dressing room, then braided her hair again while Todd continued to sleep peacefully. He looks different, Noelle observed, glancing at the prince. More color in his face. Less pain around his eyes. He's healing, Krista said, and felt the truth of it in her bones. Slowly. But it's working. Good, Noelle said firmly. The kingdom needs him. And I think... She hesitated, then continued carefully. I think he needs you, miss. Not just for the healing, but as a person. Someone who understands him. Krista didn't know how to respond to that, so she said nothing. But as she looked at Todd's sleeping face, at the way his hand still rested on the bed where hers had been, she felt something shift in her chest. Something that felt dangerously like hope. The meeting with Alpha King Raphael and his scholars was every bit as overwhelming as Krista had feared. They sat in a private study filled with ancient texts and artifacts. 5 elderly men and women who studied her like she was a specimen to be dissected and catalogued. Tell us about your mother. The eldest scholar, a woman named Gail Hudson with sharp gray eyes, demanded. Everything you can remember. What she looked like, what she could do, what she told you about your heritage. Krista's hands twisted in her lap. She was beautiful. Dark hair like mine, but green eyes. She could grow things not with magic that I ever saw, but she had a way with plants. Everything she touched seemed to flourish. She made healing salves and teas for the pack, though they barely paid her for it. Did she have a wolf? Another scholar asked, making notes on parchment. I don't think so, Krista said slowly. I never saw her shift. But she died when I was 10, and I always assumed it was because I was too young to remember her wolf. She was likely wolfless like you, Gail said, nodding as if this confirmed something. The healing magic and the wolf magic are incompatible in the Bass bloodline. You can have one or the other, but not both. Your ancestors chose healing, and the cost was their wolves. That's why the curse worked, Raphael said, from where he stood by the window. The Bass matriarch cursed the Thornton firstborns to be wolfless, the exact condition she and her bloodline lived with by choice. It was poetic justice in her mind, making us understand what we'd destroyed. But why make it hereditary? Krista asked. Why curse generations of innocent children for something their ancestors did? Because that's what your ancestors experienced, Gail explained. When the Thorntons destroyed the Bass family, they didn't just kill the adults, they killed the children too. Entire bloodlines erased. So the matriarch ensured the Thorntons would feel that same loss, that same grief, generation after generation. The room fell silent, heavy with the weight of ancient tragedy. Krista thought of Todd, born into a curse he'd had no part in creating, suffering for sins committed 500 years before his birth. The injustice of it burned in her chest. How do we break it completely? She asked. I'm singing the lullaby, using the amulet, and it's helping him. But is that enough? Or is there more I need to do? The scholars exchanged glances. We don't know, one of them admitted. The texts are incomplete. Deliberately so, we think. The Bass matriarch didn't want to make it easy, but there are fragments that suggest the cure requires time, proximity, and... He hesitated. And what? Raphael demanded. Connection, Gale said quietly. Emotional connection. The curse was born of hate and grief. Perhaps it can only be fully broken by opposite emotions. Love, Krista whispered, understanding dawning. It requires love. Not necessarily romantic love, Gale said quickly, but genuine care, compassion, the willingness to sacrifice for another. The lullaby channels the healing power, but emotion fuels it. The stronger your desire to save him, the more effective the magic will be. Krista's mind reeled. So you're saying I need to care about him? For the healing to work? You already do, Raphael said, watching her carefully. I saw your face last night when the guard came to fetch you. You didn't hesitate. You didn't ask what you'd get in return. You just came because he needed you. He was in pain, Krista said defensively. Of course I came. Exactly, Raphael said softly. That's the connection the curse requires. That's what will break it. Krista stood abruptly, needing to move, to escape the weight of their stares. This is too much. You're asking me to what? Fall in love with him? A prince I just met? That's insane. We're not asking you to do anything, Gale said. We're simply explaining what the magic requires. What happens between you and Prince Todd is your business. But if you want to save him, truly save him, not just ease his symptoms, then you need to let yourself feel, let yourself connect. Stop holding yourself at a distance. I don't hold myself at a distance, Krista protested weakly. Don't you? Raphael challenged. You've been hurt, rejected, told you're worthless. So you've built walls to protect yourself. But those walls are going to prevent the healing from completing. You need to let them down. Let Todd in. Let yourself be vulnerable. And if I can't, Krista whispered. What if I'm too broken for that? Then we'll find another way, Raphael said firmly. But I don't think you're broken, Krista. I think you're exactly what my son needs. And I think he's exactly what you need. Sometimes the universe has a strange way of bringing the right people together, even across centuries of hatred and pain. Krista wanted to argue, to protest, to run from this room and this castle and these impossible expectations. But then she thought of Todd's hand holding hers through the night. His voice sang together. The way looking at him made her feel less alone for the first time in years. I'll try, she said finally. I can't promise anything, but I'll try. That's all we ask, Raphael said, and the relief in his voice was evident. She spent the rest of the day with Todd, and it was easier than she'd expected. They talked about everything and nothing, his childhood in the castle, her memories of her mother, books they'd both read, dreams they'd had. He made her laugh with dry observations about court politics. She made him smile with stories of her disastrous attempts at learning to cook. And every few hours, she sang the lullaby, watching the amulet glow and feeling the power flow through her into him. Each time, he looked stronger. The pain receded further. His movements became less labored. I can feel it working, Todd said as the sun set outside his window. Not just the absence of pain, but something growing stronger inside me. Like a part of me that's been sleeping is finally starting to wake up. Your wolf? Krista asked hopefully. Maybe. Or maybe just me. The person I was always supposed to be. Before the curse stunted everything. He reached for her hand, and she gave it without hesitation now. Thank you. For staying. For trying. For not treating me like I'm made of glass. You're not made of glass, Krista said. You're stronger than anyone I've ever met. You've survived 19 years of something that would have killed most people. That takes incredible strength. So have you, Todd pointed out. Survived in a world that told you that you were worthless. That's its own kind of curse. Maybe we're both cursed, Krista said softly. And maybe we're both healing each other. Todd's thumb traced patterns on her palm, and she felt warmth spread up her arm, into her chest, settling somewhere near her heart. "I'd like that," he said. "Being healed by you, healing you in return, building something new out of all this brokenness." The amulet pulsed between them, glowing soft and steady, and Krista realized with a start that she wasn't afraid anymore. Not of the magic, not of the curse, not even of the feelings growing in her chest whenever she looked at Todd. Maybe, she thought, the scholars were right. Maybe the key to breaking the curse was simply letting herself feel, letting herself hope, letting herself believe that she might deserve something good after all. "Sing for me?" Todd asked, settling back against his pillows. Krista smiled and began the lullaby, her voice strong and sure, and watched as healing light filled the room like a promise being kept. Chapter 4. The Invisible Thread Between Broken Souls. 2 weeks passed in a rhythm that felt almost like peace. Krista would wake in her chambers, breakfast with Noelle chattering about castle gossip, then spend her mornings in the library studying the ancient texts with the scholars. They were trying to piece together more information about the Bass bloodline, about the curse, about what might be required to complete the healing. The afternoons and evenings belonged to Todd. They fell into an easy companionship that surprised Krista with its naturalness. Todd was well-read and curious, with a dry wit that caught her off guard and made her laugh when she least expected it. He asked her questions about her life before the castle, real questions, not the polite surface inquiries people usually made. He wanted to know what had hurt her, what had sustained her, what she dreamed about in the darkest parts of night. And slowly, carefully, she told him. "Lester was my fated mate," Krista said one afternoon, sitting in the chair that had become permanently stationed beside Todd's bed. He was strong enough now to sit up for hours at a time, to walk around his chambers without becoming winded. The improvement was undeniable, miraculous even, but he still needed the nightly rituals, still needed her proximity to keep the pain at bay. "I felt the bond snap into place the moment I turned 18. It was like lightning in my veins, this certainty that he was mine and I was his." "But you didn't have your wolf yet," Todd said, understanding already where this was going. "No. And when my first shift never came, when the pack healer examined me and announced to everyone that I was barren." Krista's hands twisted in her lap. "Lester looked at me like I'd betrayed him, like I'd deliberately become defective just to ruin his life. He rejected the bond 2 days later, in front of the whole pack, said he deserved a mate who could give him strong cubs, not a hollow shell pretending to be a woman." Todd's jaw clenched, his hands fisting in the bed covers. "I want to find this Lester and show him exactly what I think of men who treat their mates that way." "You don't have a wolf to fight him with," Krista pointed out, but she was oddly touched by his anger on her behalf. "I don't need a wolf to make a man regret his choices," Todd said darkly. Then his expression softened. "How did you survive it? The rejection bond, I've read it's excruciating." "It was," Krista admitted. "For weeks, I felt like I was dying. Like something vital had been ripped out of my chest. But eventually, the pain faded to a dull ache, and then to nothing at all. Now when I think of Lester, all I feel is," she searched for the right word, "relief. That I'm not tied to someone who saw me as a broodmare first, and a person second." "Good," Todd said firmly. "You deserve better than that. You deserve someone who sees you, really sees you, and recognizes how extraordinary you are." Krista felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I'm not extraordinary. I'm just—" "Don't," Todd interrupted gently. "Don't diminish yourself. You're the last of an ancient bloodline. You're healing a curse that's plagued my family for 5 centuries. You stayed here even though you could have taken my father's gold and disappeared. You sit with me night after night, singing until your voice is raw, draining yourself to keep me alive. That's extraordinary, Krista. Own it." She met his eyes, saw the sincerity there, the absolute conviction, and something in her chest cracked open a wall she hadn't even realized she'd built. "You make me feel like I matter," she whispered. "Like my life has purpose." "Your life has always had purpose," Todd said. "You just couldn't see it because everyone around you was determined to make you feel small. But you're not small, Krista. You're powerful and brave and kind, and I—" He stopped abruptly, looking away. "You what?" Krista prompted, leaning forward. Todd was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was carefully neutral. "I'm grateful. For everything you're doing. For giving me a chance at a real life." It wasn't what he'd been about to say, Krista was certain of that. But she didn't push. They were both navigating unfamiliar territory. both trying to understand what was growing between them. Rushing it would only break something fragile and precious. "Tell me about your dreams," she said instead, changing the subject. "The ones you had before I arrived. You said you saw me in them." Todd's shoulders relaxed, grateful for the shift. "Yes. They started about a month before you came. At first, it was just a voice singing in a language I didn't understand. The song would ease the pain, make it bearable. Then the voice became a figure always in shadow, always just out of reach. Dark hair, pale skin, sad eyes. I'd try to get closer, to see clearly, but I'd wake up before I could." "That's unsettling," Krista said. "Dreaming of someone you've never met." "I thought I was going mad," Todd admitted. "Or that it was a side effect of the pain. My mind creating comfort where none existed. But then you walked into my room, and I knew. That was the face from my dreams. That was the voice I'd been hearing. You were real." "The curse," Krista murmured. "It must have been connecting us, drawing us together even before we met." "Or maybe fate," Todd suggested. "Not everything has to be about the curse. Maybe some part of me just recognized you. Knew you were important. Knew I needed you." The amulet, resting as always on Todd's bedside table, pulsed with soft light. It did that sometimes now, even when Krista wasn't actively using it, as if it approved of their conversations, their growing closeness. "I need to practice the ritual," Krista said, standing and reaching for the amulet. "Gail says the more often I channel the power, the stronger it becomes. We should do at least 2 sessions today." "Always so dutiful," Todd teased, but he was already shifting to make room for her to sit on the edge of his bed, a new development in their routine. The proximity made the magic stronger, the scholars had discovered. The closer they were, the more effective the healing. Krista settled beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. She placed the amulet over his heart, and it immediately began to glow, responding to their nearness. "Ready?" "Always," Todd said, and his hand found hers, fingers intertwining. She sang, and the power flowed through her like water through a riverbed, easier now, more natural. The words no longer felt foreign on her tongue. She understood them instinctively, though the scholars still debated their exact translation. Something about mending broken hearts, healing divided souls, blessing what had been cursed, finding what had been lost. The light from the amulet grew brighter, pulsing in rhythm with Todd's heartbeat. Krista felt the connection between them strengthen, felt her life force flowing into him, felt his gratitude and wonder flowing back. It was intimate in a way that had nothing to do with bodies and everything to do with souls. When the song ended, they sat in silence for a moment, both breathing hard as if they'd been running. The amulet's light faded slowly, reluctantly. "It's stronger every time," Todd said, his voice rough. "The connection. I can feel you inside me now. Not just during the ritual but always, like you've taken up permanent residence in my chest." "I feel it too," Krista admitted. "Like there's a thread connecting us. I know when you're in pain before anyone tells me. I know when you're happy, when you're frustrated, when you're afraid." "The mate bond," Todd said quietly. Krista's head snapped up. "What?" "That's what it sounds like. The mate bond. My parents describe it the same way, this constant awareness of each other, this emotional connection that transcends distance." Todd's storm gray eyes searched hers. "The scholars said the healing requires connection. Emotional connection. What if the curse breaking is creating a mate bond between us?" "That's not possible," Krista said automatically. "Mate bonds are chosen by the moon goddess. They can't be manufactured by magic." "Says who?" Todd challenged. "Ancient curses aren't supposed to be real either. But here we are. What if the curse and the cure are 2 sides of the same coin? What if breaking the curse requires the exact opposite of what created it, not hatred and vengeance, but the deepest connection 2 people can have?" Krista's heart was pounding so hard she was sure Todd could hear it. "If that's true, then we're mates," Todd finished. "Bound by magic and curse and 5 centuries of waiting. Fate, or coincidence, or deliberate design, does it matter? I feel it, Krista. This pull toward you. This certainty that you're mine and I'm yours. Tell me you don't feel it too." She should deny it, should laugh it off as the product of forced proximity and heightened emotions, should protect herself from more potential heartbreak. But looking into Todd's eyes, feeling the thread that connected them pulling taut, Krista couldn't lie. "I feel it," she whispered. "I've felt it since the first moment I saw you. But Todd, I'm not. I can't be your mate. You're a prince. You need someone who can give you heirs, who can strengthen alliances, who knows how to navigate court politics. I'm a wolfless barren nobody from a pack that barely tolerated my existence. Stop, Todd said firmly. He turned to face her fully, both hands coming up to cup her face. Stop telling yourself you're not enough. Stop believing the lies that Lester and your pack and your father fed you. You're healing me. You're breaking a curse. You're powerful and brave and beautiful, and I don't care if you can't give me heirs. I care that you make me laugh. I care that you understand what it's like to be broken. I care that when you sing, I feel like I might actually survive this. That's what matters. Tears burned in Krista's eyes. Your father will never allow it. The kingdom needs an heir. A proper heir with a wolf and a mate who can. Let me worry about my father, Todd said. Right now, in this moment, it's just us. Just you and me. And this bond growing between us. Can we have that? Can we just feel this without worrying about kingdoms and heirs and what everyone else expects? Krista knew she should say no. Knew she should keep her distance, protect her heart, remember that she was here to heal him, not to fall in love with him. But the thread between them pulled tight, and she found herself leaning into his touch, letting her eyes flutter closed. Yes, she breathed. Just for now. Just for this moment. Todd's forehead rested against hers, and they breathed together, synchronized. The amulet pulsed once, twice, 3 times a heartbeat of approval. The peace lasted 4 more days. Krista should have known it was too good to be true, should have recognized that happiness, for people like her, was always temporary. But she'd been lulled into complacency by Todd's steady improvement, by the easy rhythm of their days, by the way he looked at her like she hung the moon. She was in the library with Gail when Noelle came running in, her face pale and panicked. Miss Krista, come quickly. It's the prince. Krista was on her feet, and moving before Noelle finished speaking, her heart in her throat. She ran through the corridors, not caring about protocol or propriety, only that Todd needed her and she wasn't there. She burst into his chambers to find chaos. Todd was on the floor, convulsing violently, his body arching and twisting in ways that looked impossible. His skin was shifting, patches of fur appearing and disappearing, bones cracking and reforming, his face contorting between human and something else, the half-shift, the thing that was killing him. What happened? Krista demanded, dropping to her knees beside him. We don't know, one of the physicians said, hovering uselessly. He was fine this morning. Then he complained of pain and collapsed. We can't get him to stabilize. Where's the amulet? Krista asked urgently. Here. Raphael appeared, holding it out to her. We tried placing it on him, but without you, it does nothing. Krista took the amulet and pressed it to Todd's chest. His eyes flew open, wild, unfocused, more wolf than human. He didn't seem to recognize her. Todd, she said firmly, pouring every ounce of command she could muster into her voice. Todd, look at me, focus on me. His eyes found hers, and some of the wildness receded. She began to sing, loud and strong, pushing the power through the amulet with everything she had. The lullaby filled the room, and slowly, agonizingly slowly, Todd's convulsions eased. But not completely. His body was still shifting, still trying to transform into something it couldn't become. The fur receded, but his eyes remained more amber than gray. His hands were tipped with claws that kept appearing and disappearing. It's not enough, Gail said from the doorway, her voice grave. The curse is fighting back. It knows it's losing, so it's surging, trying to kill him before the healing can complete. What do I do? Krista asked desperately, still singing between words. More power, Gail said. You need to give him more. But Krista, if you do that, it will drain you. Significantly, you could. I don't care, Krista interrupted. Tell me how. Blood, Gail said reluctantly. Your blood mixed with the ritual. It's the most direct connection. The purest form of your power. Krista didn't hesitate. She grabbed a letter opener from Todd's desk and sliced across her palm, hissing at the sharp pain. Blood welled immediately, and she pressed her bleeding hand to Todd's chest, over the amulet, and sang. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Power surged through her like lightning, so intense it was almost painful. The amulet blazed with light so bright everyone in the room had to look away. Todd screamed a sound that was half human, half wolf, and his body arched one final time before going completely still. For a horrible moment, Krista thought she'd killed him. Then his chest rose and fell in a deep, steady breath. His eyes opened fully gray now, fully human, fully him. "Krista," he croaked, his hand coming up to cover hers where it still pressed against his chest. "I'm here," she said, but her voice sounded distant even to her own ears. The room was spinning, darkness creeping in at the edges of her vision. She'd given too much, poured too much of herself into him. "Someone catch her," she heard Gale say urgently. And then she was falling into darkness, while Todd's voice called her name desperately from somewhere far away. She woke in her own chambers, tucked into her too-soft bed. Noelle was sitting in a chair beside her, embroidering, and jumped up when Krista stirred. "Miss." "Thank the goddess. You've been asleep for 2 days." 2 days? Krista tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Her body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, and every movement took enormous effort. "Don't move," Noelle scolded, gently pressing her back down. "The physicians said you need complete rest. You nearly died, miss. Drained yourself to almost nothing, saving the prince." "Todd," Krista said urgently. "Is he?" "He's fine," Noelle assured her quickly. "Better than fine, actually. He's been going mad, demanding to see you, but the Alpha King forbade it. Said you needed rest without distractions." Relief flooded through Krista, and she let herself relax back into the pillows. He was alive. He was fine. That was all that mattered. "There's something else," Noelle said hesitantly. "While you were unconscious, the prince's wolf emerged." Krista's eyes flew open. "What?" "Just for a moment. He was so upset about you collapsing that he shifted partially. They said it was the first time he'd ever managed it. Black fur, amber eyes. It only lasted a few seconds before he changed back, but miss, he shifted. The curse is breaking. Whatever you did, it's working." Tears leaked from the corners of Krista's eyes. It was working. All the pain, all the effort, all the risk, it was worth it. Todd was healing. Really healing. "There's more," Noelle continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. "The Alpha King sent for a healer from the neighboring kingdom. A woman from a distant branch of your family, the Bass bloodline. She arrived this morning." Ice flooded Krista's veins. "What?" "Her name is Amy Zhang. She's a cousin, the scholars say. Descended from the same bloodline as you, but from a branch that fled east instead of west. She has the healing magic too. And miss." Noelle's expression was pained. "She's beautiful, educated, well-spoken, everything a prince's consort should be. The Alpha King is considering having her continue your work. Heal the prince the rest of the way, while you recover." "No," Krista said, trying to sit up again despite the exhaustion dragging at her. "No, she can't. The bond, Todd and I are connected. Another healer might hurt him, might disrupt." "I know, miss," Noelle said gently, "but you're in no condition to argue, and the Alpha King is concerned about you dying. He says if this Amy can finish the healing, you can rest and recover. He thinks he's protecting you." But Krista knew better. This wasn't about protection. This was about finding a more suitable match for the prince. Someone who could be both healer and proper consort. Someone who wouldn't embarrass the royal family. Someone who wasn't her. "I need to see Todd," Krista said, forcing herself to swing her legs over the side of the bed despite her body's protests. "Now, miss, you can't." "Noelle," Krista said firmly. "Either help me walk, or I'll crawl." "But I'm going to him." Noelle bit her lip, then nodded. "At least let me help you dress properly. If you're going to fight for him, you should look the part." As Noelle helped her into a simple but elegant dress, Krista felt the thread connecting her to Todd pulling taut. He was close, and he was afraid. She could feel his anxiety like it was her own, could sense his desperation to reach her. The mate bond, she realized. It was fully formed now, undeniable. And if the Alpha King thought he could sever it by bringing in another healer, he was about to learn exactly how powerful the Bass bloodline could be when protecting what was theirs. She was done being passive, done letting others dictate her worth. Todd was hers, chosen by magic and curse, and something deeper than either. And she'd be damned if she'd let anyone take him away. Chapter 5. A beautiful threat arrives. Krista made it halfway down the corridor before her legs gave out. Noelle caught her with surprising strength for such a small woman, bracing her against the wall while Krista fought to catch her breath. "You can't do this, miss," Noelle pleaded. "You're going to collapse again." "Then I'll collapse in front of Todd," Krista said stubbornly. So he knows I fought to get to him. The bond in her chest pulled insistently, and she could feel Todd's emotions churning: frustration, worry, anger, and beneath it all, a desperate need to see her, to confirm she was alive and whole. She sent what comfort she could back along the thread, hoping he could feel it. At least let me get a wheelchair, Noelle said. There's no shame in. There you are. Both women turned to find Amy Zhang standing at the end of the corridor, and Krista's heart sank. Noelle hadn't been exaggerating. Amy was beautiful, tall and elegant, with glossy black hair that fell in perfect waves down her back and striking features that spoke of carefully maintained nobility. She wore a dress of deep burgundy that probably cost more than Krista's entire wardrobe, and carried herself with the confidence of someone who had never been told she wasn't enough. You must be Krista Bass, Amy said, gliding closer with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I've heard so much about you. The Alpha King speaks very highly of your dedication to healing Prince Todd. Does he? Krista said flatly, refusing to be charmed by the false pleasantness in Amy's voice. Oh yes. He's quite grateful for everything you've done, which is why he's so concerned about your health. Amy's gaze swept over Krista, taking in her pallor, her trembling hands, the way she needed Noelle's support to remain standing. You've given so much of yourself. Too much, perhaps. It's admirable. Truly. But also rather reckless. I did what was necessary to save his life, Krista said. Of course you did. And now it's time to let someone else shoulder the burden. Amy's smile widened slightly. I've already met with Prince Todd. Such a lovely young man. Quite handsome, despite his condition. I've assured him that I'm more than capable of continuing the healing work while you rest and recover. The thread in Krista's chest went taut with alarm, and she felt Todd's presence drawing closer. He was coming to her, she realized, fighting his way through whatever obstacles his father had placed to keep them apart. How did he respond? Krista asked, keeping her voice carefully neutral. He was polite, Amy said, and there was something smug in her expression now. Reserved, of course, given his condition. But I could sense the gratitude beneath the surface. He knows his father is trying to protect him by ensuring the best possible care. I'm the best possible care, Krista said, and she didn't care how arrogant it sounded. Todd and I have a connection. A bond that makes the healing more effective. Another healer, even one from my bloodline, won't have that. Ah yes, this supposed bond. Amy's tone made it clear what she thought of that claim. The Alpha King mentioned you might argue that. But bonds can be formed with time and proximity, can they not? Perhaps what you're feeling is simply the natural result of spending so much time together. Not destiny, just familiarity. It's more than that, Krista insisted, but doubt crept in despite her certainty. What if Amy was right? What if what she felt for Todd was just gratitude, desperation, the product of two broken people clinging to each other? Miss Krista, a young guard came running up, slightly out of breath. The prince is asking for you. He's in the West Gallery. He says, well, he's refusing to return to his chambers until he sees you. Relief and worry warred in Krista's chest. Take me to him. The Alpha King gave strict orders, the guard began. I don't care about his orders, Krista interrupted. Take me to Prince Todd, now. The guard looked between Krista's determined face and Amy's calculating expression, then made his decision. This way. Noelle helped Krista follow the guard, leaving Amy standing in the corridor. Krista could feel the other woman's eyes boring into her back, assessing, measuring, planning. Amy Zhang wasn't just a healer, she was a rival. And she had the backing of the Alpha King. The West Gallery was a long corridor lined with portraits of Thornton ancestors. Todd stood at the far end, staring out a tall window, his shoulders rigid with tension. He turned the moment Krista entered, and the relief that washed over his face was so profound it made her breath catch. Krista, he breathed, crossing the distance between them in quick strides. He reached for her, then seemed to remember himself and pulled back. You're awake. How are you feeling? Should you be out of bed? I'm fine, Krista lied. I needed to see you. Todd's eyes swept over her, and she knew he could see past the lie. You're pale, you're trembling. You nearly died because of me, and my father wants to. He broke off, his jaw clenching. He wants to replace you. With Amy Zhang. Says you need rest, that I'm draining you, that it's not sustainable. What do you want? Krista asked quietly. Todd's eyes locked on hers. You. Only you. The bond between us, it's not something that can be replicated or replaced. I tried to explain that to my father, but he thinks I'm confused, that I'm mistaking gratitude for something deeper. Amy said the same thing, Krista admitted. Amy is wrong, Todd said firmly. He stepped closer, close enough that Krista could feel the warmth radiating from him. I know what I feel. This isn't gratitude or convenience or desperation. This is... He pressed his hand to his chest. Over his heart. You're here. Inside me. Constant and undeniable. When you collapsed, I felt it. Your pain, your fear, your life force flickering like a candle in wind. It nearly destroyed me. I felt you too, Krista whispered. When you shifted, the triumph and terror and wonder of it, I felt all of it. That's not normal proximity bonding, Todd said. That's a mate bond. And my father can bring 100 healers from 100 branches of your family tree. But none of them will have what we have. None of them will be you. Behind them, someone cleared their throat. Krista and Todd turned to find Alpha King Raphael standing in the gallery entrance, his expression grave. Beside him stood Amy Zhang, looking perfectly composed. I see you've found each other, Raphael said. Despite my explicit instructions that Krista needed rest. With all due respect, Father, your instructions were wrong, Todd said, and there was steel in his voice that Krista had never heard before. Separating us doesn't help the healing. It hinders it. You're biased, Raphael said. You've formed an attachment to the girl, which is understandable given the circumstances. But that attachment is clouding your judgment. Miss Zhang here has offered to continue the healing work while Miss Bass recovers. She has the same bloodline, the same magic. There's no reason she can't. Except for the mate bond, Todd interrupted. The silence that followed was deafening. Raphael's eyes widened, and Amy's perfect composure finally cracked, her face twisting with something ugly before she smoothed it away. Mate bond? Raphael repeated slowly. Todd, you don't have a wolf. You can't form a mate bond without. The magic did it, Todd said. The healing created it. Or maybe it was always meant to be, and the curse was keeping it dormant. I don't know how it works, Father, but I know what I feel. Krista is my mate. The moon goddess herself couldn't have chosen better. This is impossible, Amy said, her voice sharp. Mate bonds are sacred. They can't be manufactured by magic. What you're feeling is a side effect of the healing, a temporary connection that will fade once the curse is fully broken. You don't know that, Krista said, finding her voice. None of us know how this works. We're in uncharted territory. Exactly, Raphael said, which is why we need to be cautious. Todd, if this bond is real, it will persist even if Miss Bass rests and Miss Zhang takes over the healing for a few weeks. If it's not, if it's just a product of the magic, then we need to know that before you make any permanent declarations. No, Todd said flatly. I won't risk disrupting the healing by introducing another variable. Krista stays. She continues the work. That's final. You don't give orders to the Alpha King, Raphael said, his voice hardening. Not even if you are my son and heir. Then strip my title, Todd said recklessly. Because I'm not letting you separate us. Not when she's the only thing keeping me alive. The thread in Krista's chest pulled tight with Todd's desperation, and she felt an answering surge of protectiveness so fierce it made her dizzy. Or maybe that was just the exhaustion. Either way, she swayed, and both Todd and Noelle reached for her simultaneously. She's going to collapse, Noelle said urgently. Please, Alpha King, let her rest. In her own chambers, close to the prince. Let them maintain the bond while she recovers. Surely that's a compromise? Raphael looked at Krista's pale face, at the way Todd held her with such careful desperation, and something in his expression softened. Very well. But Miss Zhang will observe, study the techniques, learn the rituals, so that if when Miss Bass needs a break, we have an alternative. Father, Todd began to protest. That's my final offer, Raphael said firmly. Take it or I'll have Miss Bass move to the far wing of the castle. Todd looked at Krista, and she gave him the smallest nod. It wasn't ideal, but it kept them together. That was what mattered. Fine, Todd said. But Amy doesn't interfere with the healing. She observes only. Agreed, Raphael said. He turned to Amy. You'll report your observations to me and the scholars. Objectively and thoroughly. Amy's smile was razor sharp. Of course, Alpha King. I live to serve. The next week was torture. Amy shadowed Krista constantly, watching every ritual, studying every gesture, taking copious notes. Her presence made Krista's skin crawl, made the magic feel sluggish and reluctant. But worst of all was the way Amy looked at Todd with poorly concealed desire and calculating ambition. She wants him, Noelle whispered one evening, while helping Krista dress for dinner. Not for love, for power. A prince's mate would elevate her status significantly. He's not available, Krista said, trying to keep the jealousy out of her voice. Try telling her that. Noelle secured the last button. She's been asking the staff questions. About you, about your relationship with the prince, about whether you're really mates or just playing at it. What are people saying? Noelle hesitated. Mixed things. Some believe you. They see the way you look at each other, the way the magic responds to your connection. But others, she trailed off. Others think I'm a desperate, wolfless nobody trying to trap a prince. Krista finished bitterly. I don't think that, Noelle said firmly. And neither does anyone who's actually spent time with you and the prince. The bond is obvious to anyone with eyes. But was it? Krista stared at her reflection in the mirror. She looked better than she had a week ago. Some color had returned to her cheeks, and the constant exhaustion had faded to a manageable fatigue. But she still looked like exactly what she was. A commoner in borrowed finery, playing at being someone important. Amy, by contrast, looked like she'd been born to stand beside a prince. She moved through the castle with easy grace, charmed the servants, impressed the scholars with her knowledge of ancient healing practices. She was everything Krista wasn't: polished, educated, confident. Stop it, Noelle said, reading Krista's expression. You're spiraling. The prince chose you. The magic chose you. That's all that matters. But when Krista entered Todd's chambers for the evening ritual and found Amy already there, laughing at something Todd had said, doubt crept back in. Krista, Todd said immediately, his attention shifting entirely to her. I was just telling Amy about the dream I had last night. Another memory surfacing, I think. From before the curse. How fascinating, Amy said, her smile never wavering. The mind is remarkable, isn't it? Storing memories we don't consciously recall. I'd love to hear more about these dreams, Prince Todd. Perhaps during tomorrow's observation session? Perhaps, Todd said non-committally, then gestured for Krista to join him. Are you ready for the ritual? Krista nodded, moving to her usual spot on the edge of his bed. Amy settled into a chair in the corner, notebook ready, eyes sharp and assessing. Krista tried to ignore her, focusing instead on the amulet in her hands, on the warmth of Todd's presence beside her. She began to sing, but the words felt clumsy on her tongue. The power didn't flow as smoothly as usual, catching and stuttering like a stream encountering rocks. Todd's brow furrowed, and Krista felt his concern through the bond. It's fine, she murmured between verses. Just tired. But it wasn't fine. The ritual that usually took 20 minutes stretched to 40, and when it finally ended, Krista was gasping for breath, sweat beading on her forehead. The amulet had barely glowed at all. Interesting, Amy said, scribbling notes. The efficacy seems to be declining. Tell me, Krista, how much of your own life force do you estimate you're transferring during each ritual? I don't know, Krista admitted, wiping her forehead with a shaking hand. And you've been doing this twice daily for nearly 3 weeks now? Amy's tone was clinical, detached. No wonder you're exhausted. The human body, even one with magical ability, simply isn't designed for this level of sustained energy transfer. What are you saying? Todd asked, his hand finding Krista's and gripping it tightly. I'm saying that this method, while effective initially, may not be sustainable long-term, Amy said. The Bass healing magic was never meant to be channeled so intensely for such extended periods. It's designed for acute intervention, healing a specific wound, curing a specific illness. What you're asking Krista to do is essentially pour her life force into you, drop by drop, until either the curse breaks or she runs dry. That's not, Krista began. Isn't it? Amy challenged. Look at yourself, Krista. You're wasting away. Another month of this and you'll be bedridden. Another 3 and you might not survive at all. Is that really what you want? To die saving a prince you barely know? I know him, Krista said fiercely. Better than you ever could. Do you? You've spent, what, a month together? Under extraordinary circumstances, yes, but hardly enough time to truly know someone, especially when you're both desperate, him for healing, you for purpose. Amy, that's enough, Todd said coldly. I'm simply being honest, Amy said, spreading her hands innocently. Someone needs to say these things. The Alpha King asked me to observe objectively, and objectively, I see a healing process that's destroying the healer. There are other methods, slower, perhaps, but safer. I could teach you, Krista. We could work together, divide the burden between two healers instead of placing it all on your shoulders. It was a reasonable offer. A logical solution. So why did every instinct in Krista's body scream at her to refuse? The bond, she said. Todd and I are connected. Splitting the healing between us might break that connection. Or it might strengthen it by ensuring you survive, Amy countered. A mate bond can't exist if one mate is dead. Todd's hand tightened painfully on Krista's. What's your real goal here, Amy? Because this sudden concern for Krista's well-being rings false. Amy's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and calculating beneath. My goal is to heal you, Prince Todd. By whatever means necessary. If that means working with Krista, wonderful. If it means replacing her when she inevitably burns out, I'm prepared to do that too. What I won't do is stand by and watch a perfectly viable healing opportunity fail because two desperate people convince themselves they're fated mates. Get out, Todd said quietly, but with absolute authority. Get out of my chambers, now. Amy stood gracefully, gathering her notebook. As you wish, Your Highness. But when you're ready to accept reality, I'll be waiting. She glided toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Krista? You might want to examine your palm. The one you cut to use your blood in the ritual. I noticed something concerning. After she left, Krista looked down at her palm. The cut had healed, but in its place was a mark, a thin black line like a vein, spreading from where the wound had been. As she watched, it pulsed once, in rhythm with her heartbeat. What is that? Todd asked, alarmed. I don't know, Krista whispered. But even as she said it, she felt a chill run down her spine. The mark looked wrong. Felt wrong, like something dark had taken root beneath her skin. We need to show this to the scholars, Todd said, already standing. Now. But as they headed for the door, Krista felt the mark pulse again, and with it came a flash of memory, not her own but older, ancient. A memory from the bloodline itself. Blood given freely breaks the curse. Blood given in desperation feeds it. She'd used her blood in desperation, in panic, in fear of losing Todd. And somehow, in doing so, she'd tied herself even more deeply to the curse than she'd intended. Not as a healer, but as a sacrifice. Amy had been right about one thing. Krista was running out of time. But it wasn't because the healing was draining her. It was because the curse had found a new host. Chapter 6, The Terrible Truth. The scholars gathered in Raphael's private study, forming a circle around Krista as she held out her marked palm. Gail Hudson leaned in close, her gray eyes narrowed in concentration, while the other scholars murmured amongst themselves in increasingly worried tones. This is dark magic. One of the younger scholars, a man named Jay Spence, said nervously. Corruption. It shouldn't be possible. The Bass healing magic is light-based, pure. This is the opposite. It's not corruption, Gail said slowly, tracing the black line with one gnarled finger but not quite touching it. It's transference. Krista, when you used your blood in the ritual, what were you feeling? Terror, Krista admitted. Todd was dying. The normal ritual wasn't working. I was desperate. And you cut yourself without protection, without proper preparation, without understanding what you were doing, Gail said. It wasn't a question. The Bass magic requires emotional purity, calm, clarity, compassionate intent. You gave it desperation and fear instead. What does that mean? Todd demanded from where he stood behind Krista, his hand on her shoulder. What did she do? She created a backdoor, Gail said grimly. The curse is intelligent, in its way. Ancient magic always is. It's been trying to kill Todd for 19 years, and suddenly it's losing. Krista's healing was breaking it apart, dissolving it, so it adapted. When she used her blood in desperation, the curse saw an opportunity, a new host, one with even more magical potential than Todd. The room went silent. Krista felt the blood drain from her face. You're saying the curse jumped from me to Krista? Todd asked, his voice hollow. Not jumped, Gail corrected. Expanded. It's still in you, Todd, but now it's in her too. Feeding on her life force, using her own magic against her. The more she heals you, the more it grows in her. Eventually. Eventually what? Krista whispered, though she already knew the answer. Eventually it will consume you, Gail said quietly. Transform you from healer to cursed. and once that happens, you won't be able to heal Todd anymore. The curse will have won. How long? Raphael asked, his voice tight. Gale examined the mark again. The spread is slow. At this rate, perhaps 6 weeks before it reaches her heart. Once it does. She didn't need to finish. Then we remove it, Todd said firmly. Cut it out, burn it away, whatever it takes. It's not that simple, Jay interjected. This isn't a physical wound. It's magical corruption woven into her life force. Removing it would kill her just as surely as letting it spread. Then what do we do? Todd's voice broke on the last word, and Krista felt his anguish through the bond like a physical blow. The scholars exchanged uncomfortable glances. Finally, Gale spoke. There are 2 options. The first is that Krista stops healing you, immediately and completely. Without new infusions of her magic, the curse might stop spreading in her. It won't recede, but it would give us time to research other solutions. No. Both Krista and Todd said simultaneously. If I stop healing him, the curse will surge in him again, Krista continued. He could die. I won't risk that. Then the second option, Gale said heavily. Complete the healing. Break the curse entirely. All at once. Before it fully takes root in Krista. One massive ritual. Channeling everything she has. Burning out the curse in both of them simultaneously. That sounds dangerous, Raphael said. It is, Gale confirmed. Extremely. The ritual would require Krista to give everything, every drop of her magic, possibly her life itself. If it works, both the curse and the mark would be destroyed. Todd would be fully healed, his wolf completely awakened. But Krista. She trailed off meaningfully. Would die, Krista finished calmly. Strange how easy it was to say. She'd known from the beginning that saving Todd might cost her everything. She'd just hoped it wouldn't come to this. Not necessarily, Gale said, but her tone lacked conviction. If the mate bond is real, truly real, not just a product of the magic, then it might sustain you. Mate bonds are 2-way channels. You'd give your life force to break the curse, but Todd's awakened wolf might be able to give it back, pull you back from death. Might, Todd repeated bitterly. That's a lot of uncertainty to bet a life on. It's the only way, Krista said softly. She turned to face him, taking both his hands in hers. The black mark on her palm pressed against his skin, a stark reminder of what was growing inside her. Todd, listen to me. If we don't do this, we both die. The curse kills you, then kills me. This way, at least you have a chance. I don't want a chance without you, Todd said fiercely. I don't want to live if it costs your life. You don't get to make that choice, Krista said, trying to smile. I do. And I choose this. I choose you living, even if I don't. Krista, there may be a third option. Everyone turned to find Amy Zhang standing in the doorway. No one had heard her approach. And Krista wondered how long she'd been listening. Miss Zhang, Raphael said, frowning. This is a private meeting. I apologize for the intrusion, Alpha King. But I couldn't help overhearing, and I believe I have a solution. Amy stepped into the room, her expression carefully sympathetic. What if 2 healers performed the ritual? Krista to channel the primary magic through the mate bond, and me to support her. Share the burden. Prevent the drain from killing her. The scholars immediately began murmuring amongst themselves. Gale looked thoughtful. It's possible. The bass magic can be channeled collaboratively, though it's rarely done. The primary healer would still take the brunt of the drain, but a secondary could stabilize her, keep her heart beating, her life force from extinguishing entirely. It could work, Jay agreed cautiously. In theory. Then we do it, Raphael said. Amy assists Krista with the final ritual. That's an order. Father, we don't know if we can trust her, Todd protested, though he looked torn, clearly tempted by any option that might keep Krista alive. Trust me or don't, Amy said calmly. But I'm a healer. I took an oath to preserve life. I won't let Krista die if I can prevent it, regardless of what you think my motives are. Krista studied Amy's face, trying to read past the mask of professional concern. Was she genuine? Or was this another play for power, for position? But what choice did they have? The alternative was attempting the ritual alone and almost certainly dying. When would we do this? Krista asked. As soon as possible, Gale said. The curse mark is spreading daily. We need to act before it reaches your heart. I'd say we have perhaps a week to prepare, 2 at most. Then we prepare, Raphael said decisively. Gale, coordinate with the other scholars, document everything we know about the curse, about the Bass magic, about mate bonds. Leave nothing to chance. Amy, you'll work with Krista. Learn her techniques, synchronize your magic with hers, and Todd, Raphael's expression softened, spend time with her. If the mate bond is truly what will save her, then strengthen it however you can. Todd nodded wordlessly, his hand finding Krista's and gripping it like a lifeline. The next week passed in a blur of preparation and dread. Krista spent her mornings with Amy, practicing collaborative magic. To her surprise, Amy was an excellent teacher, patient, knowledgeable, and seemingly genuine in her desire to help. They'd sit for hours, both channeling power through the amulet simultaneously, learning to harmonize their magic like voices in a duet. Your technique is raw but powerful, Amy observed one afternoon. You rely on emotion where I was taught to rely on precision. It's actually quite effective, though exhausting. I never had formal training, Krista admitted. Just the lullaby my mother taught me. Well, your mother taught you well. The lullaby is the oldest form of Bass magic, pure, unfiltered. Most of us have moved to more structured methodologies, but there's something to be said for the traditional ways. Amy paused, then said carefully, I owe you an apology. Krista looked up, surprised. For what? For how I acted when I first arrived. I was dismissive, competitive. I saw you as an obstacle rather than an ally. Amy's expression was rueful. The truth is, I was jealous. You'd accomplished something I'd been taught was impossible, forming a mate bond through magic alone. And you'd captured the attention of a prince in the process. It made me feel inadequate. You're not inadequate, Krista said quietly. You're brilliant. Educated. Everything I'm not. And yet you're the one he loves, Amy said simply. That must count for something. The afternoons belonged to Todd. They'd walk in the castle gardens, Todd growing stronger each day, his movements more confident, and talk about everything and nothing. He told her about his childhood, about the isolation of being different, about the fear that he'd die without ever truly living. She told him about her dreams, small and humble as they were. A cottage somewhere quiet, a garden to tend, maybe a dog for company. That's all you want? Todd asked, sounding almost sad. A cottage and a garden? It's more than I ever thought I'd have, Krista said. For years, I thought my life would just be existing, surviving from day to day in a pack that didn't want me. Now I have purpose. I have. She hesitated. What? Todd prompted gently. You, she finished. I have you. Even if it's only for a little while. Todd stopped walking, turning to face her. They were in a secluded corner of the garden, surrounded by late-blooming roses. What if I told you that you could have more than a cottage and garden? That you could have a castle, a kingdom, a title? What if I asked you to be my princess? My mate officially, recognized by law and custom. Krista's breath caught. Todd, I'm serious, he said. After the ritual, when the curse is broken and you're healed, I want you to stay. Not as my healer, but as my partner, my equal. The person I choose to spend my life with. Your father would never allow it, Krista whispered, even as her heart soared with impossible hope. My father wants me alive and healthy. You'll have accomplished that. How can he deny me the one thing that will keep me happy? Todd cupped her face in his hands. Say yes, Krista. Promise me that you'll survive this ritual and say yes. She should have said no. Should have pointed out all the reasons it would never work, her low birth, her inability to bear heirs, the scandal it would cause. But looking into Todd's storm-gray eyes, feeling the mate bond singing between them, Krista found herself nodding. Yes, she breathed. If I survive, yes. Todd kissed her then, gentle and desperate and full of promise. The amulet which she always wore now pulsed with warm light against her chest, approving. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Todd pressed his forehead to hers. You'll survive. I'll make sure of it. I'll pull you back from death itself if I have to. Your wolf hasn't fully emerged yet, Krista reminded him gently. We don't know if you'll be able to. I will, Todd said with absolute certainty. The bond will guide me. Love will guide me. I won't lose you, Krista. Not when I've only just found you. The night before the ritual, Krista couldn't sleep. She stood at her window, watching the moon rise over the castle grounds, and thought about everything that had led her to this moment. A year ago, she'd been a broken, rejected nobody, counting the days until her miserable existence ended. Now she was preparing to sacrifice everything for a prince she loved, a curse she could break, a purpose that made her life mean something. Worth it, she whispered to the moon. Whatever happens tomorrow, it was worth it. A knock at the door made her turn. Come in. She expected Noel. Maybe Todd, sneaking in for one last conversation. Instead it was Amy. I couldn't sleep either, Amy said, holding up a bottle of wine. Thought you might want company. And liquid courage. Despite everything, Krista smiled. That sounds perfect. They sat by the fire, passing the bottle back and forth, and talked like old friends rather than rivals. Amy shared stories of her training, of the pressure to be perfect, of the fear of never being enough. Krista talked about her rejection, her father's betrayal, the years of slowly dying inside. You're brave, Amy said after a long silence. Braver than me. I don't know if I could do what you're doing tomorrow. You'll be right there with me, Krista pointed out. As support, yes. But you're the one putting everything on the line. Your life, your magic, your future. All for a man you've known for a month. Amy shook her head wonderingly. That's not logic, that's not duty, that's love. I never thought I'd love anyone after Lester, Krista admitted. Thought that part of me was broken along with everything else. But Todd, he makes me want to try, want to hope, want to believe in happy endings. Then we'll make sure you get one, Amy said firmly. She raised the wine bottle. To tomorrow. To breaking curses. To proving that love is stronger than hate. To tomorrow, Krista echoed, clinking her own bottle against Amy's. They drank until the bottle was empty, and the fire burned low. When Krista finally fell asleep, curled in her chair, Amy covered her with a blanket and whispered, I'm sorry. But Krista, deep in wine-soaked dreams, didn't hear. She woke to chaos. Noelle was shaking her shoulder urgently, her face pale with fear. Miss Krista. Something's wrong. The prince, he's collapsing. The curse is surging, worse than ever. Krista bolted upright, her head spinning from the wine. What? How? The ritual isn't until this afternoon. I don't know, but you need to come now. Krista ran through the corridors in her nightgown, not caring who saw. She burst into Todd's chambers to find him convulsing on the floor, his body shifting violently between forms. Black veins like the mark on her palm were spreading across his skin, pulsing with dark energy. What happened? Krista demanded, dropping to her knees beside him. We don't know, Raphael said, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. He was fine last night. This morning he woke up like this. The curse is attacking him, trying to kill him before the ritual can break it. Krista pressed her marked palm to Todd's chest, trying to channel calming energy. But instead of flowing out of her, the magic reversed, pulling inward. Todd's eyes snapped open, glowing amber, and his hand shot out, gripping her wrist with inhuman strength. Mine, he snarled in a voice that wasn't quite his. The curse demands payment. Blood for blood. Life for life. Understanding crashed over Krista like ice water. Amy, she whispered. Where's Amy? She left early this morning, Gail said from the doorway. Said she had to gather supplies for the ritual. Why? But Krista already knew. The wine. The conversation. Amy's apology that Krista had been too asleep to hear. She'd done something. Poisoned the wine, or cursed it, or somehow sabotaged everything. She accelerated the curse, Krista said, horror washing over her. She made it attack Todd to force an immediate ritual. One I'm not prepared for. One that will kill me for certain. Why would she do that? Raphael demanded. Because she wants him, Krista said simply. If I die breaking the curse, she's perfectly positioned to step in as the grieving prince's comforter. His new healer. Eventually his mate. Todd's grip on her wrist tightened, and she felt the curse pulling at her life force, trying to drain her. The black mark on her palm burned, spreading up her arm in real time. We have to do the ritual now, Gail said urgently. It's the only way to save either of them. But Amy's not here to support me, Krista said. I'll die. Maybe not, Gail said. If the mate bond is real, if it's strong enough, it might sustain you. But we have to try. Todd only has minutes before the curse kills him, and if he dies, the curse will consume you anyway. Krista looked down at Todd's agonized face, felt his pain through the bond, felt his desperate love and terror and regret. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. She was supposed to have time to prepare, to say goodbye, to make peace with her fate. But life, she was learning, rarely went according to plan. "Do it," she said. "Bring the amulet. Bring the scholars. I'll sing the lullaby one last time, and pray that love really was stronger than death." Chapter 7. When Love Breaks Ancient Magic. They carried Todd to the great hall, the largest open space in the castle, with a vaulted ceiling painted with constellations and ancient wolf legends. The scholars worked frantically, drawing symbols on the floor in chalk and salt, lighting candles in intricate patterns, chanting protection prayers in languages so old even they barely understood them. Krista knelt beside Todd in the center of the ritual circle, the amulet clutched in both hands. The black mark had spread past her elbow now, creeping up her arm like poisoned roots. She could feel it reaching for her heart, hungry and relentless. Todd's convulsions had lessened, but his breathing was shallow, his skin cold and clammy. They were both dying. The curse was winning. "The ritual requires complete honesty," Gale said, kneeling beside them. "No barriers between you. No walls, no secrets, no protection. You have to open yourself completely to him and trust that he'll do the same. The mate bond is the channel your life force flows to him. His wolf flows back to you. But it only works if you both surrender control entirely." "I don't know how to do that," Krista admitted, her voice shaking. "Yes, you do," Gale said gently. "You've been doing it since the moment you met him. Every time you sang the lullaby, every conversation in the dark, every moment you let yourself feel instead of protecting your heart. This is just the final step, letting go completely." Raphael approached, his face haggard. "Krista, if this doesn't work, if you die, I want you to know that I'm grateful. For everything you've done for my son. For giving him hope when he had none. For loving him when the world told him he was unlovable." "He was always lovable," Krista said softly. "The world was just blind." Raphael's eyes glistened, but he nodded and stepped back. The scholars finished their preparations and took their positions around the circle's perimeter. Noelle stood with the servants, tears streaming down her face. The whole castle had gathered, Krista realized. Come to witness the breaking of a 500-year-old curse, or the death of two broken people who dared to dream of more. "Are you ready?" Gale asked. Krista looked down at Todd. His eyes were closed, his face peaceful despite the poison spreading through his veins. She pressed her marked palm to his chest, over his heart, and felt the faint, struggling beat beneath. "I love you," she whispered, knowing he probably couldn't hear. "If this is goodbye, I need you to know that. Loving you was the best thing I ever did. The only thing that made sense in a life full of pain and confusion. So thank you. For seeing me. For choosing me. For making me believe I was worth saving." She placed the amulet over their joined hands, closed her eyes, and began to sing. The lullaby started soft, as it always did. The ancient words flowing from her lips like water, like prayer, like the last breath before drowning. But this time, she didn't hold anything back. She poured everything into the song, her love, her fear, her hope, her desperation. Every memory of Todd, his smile, his voice, his storm-gray eyes looking at her like she hung the stars. Every moment that had made her feel alive for the first time in her miserable existence. The amulet began to glow, brighter than it ever had before. The light was blinding, turning the great hall white as noon sun. Krista felt her life force flowing out, rushing toward Todd like a flood breaking through a dam. The black mark on her arm pulsed and writhed, fighting against the healing magic. But she sang louder, drowning it out with sound and light and love. The curse shrieked in actual sound, high-pitched and furious, as it began to burn away. Krista felt it dying inside Todd, felt the poison evaporating under the onslaught of her magic. But she felt herself dying too. Her vision darkened at the edges, her heartbeat slowed, her lungs struggled to draw breath. Worth it, she thought distantly. He'll live, that's all that matters. But then, Todd's hand, which had been limp under hers, suddenly gripped tight. His eyes snapped open, not gray anymore, but blazing amber. Wolf eyes. "No," he snarled, and his voice was doubled human and wolf speaking as one. "You don't leave me. Not like this, not ever." Krista tried to tell him it was okay, that he needed to let her go, but she couldn't make her mouth work. The darkness was closing in, her consciousness flickering like a candle in wind. Todd sat up, shouldn't have been able to. Should have been too weak. But he was moving with strength that seemed impossible and pulled Krista into his arms. "The bond goes both ways," he said fiercely. "You gave me your life, now I'm giving you mine." And then he was shifting. Really shifting. His body contorting, bones cracking and reforming, fur rippling across his skin. The transformation was violent and beautiful and terrible all at once. Within seconds, a massive black wolf stood where Todd had been easily twice the size of a normal shifter, with amber eyes that burned with ancient power. The wolf threw back its head and howled. The sound was primal, powerful, a call that seemed to shake the very foundations of the castle. And impossibly, Krista felt something answer. Deep inside her, in a place she'd always believed was empty, something stirred. Something wild and fierce and long dormant. "Your wolf," a voice whispered in her mind. Todd's voice, but also something older. It was always there. Sleeping. Waiting for me to wake it. The black wolf pressed its massive head against Krista's chest, and she felt power flood into her. Not her life force returning, but something new. Something that belonged to them both. The mate bond, fully realized. Channeling energy between them in an endless loop. The black mark on Krista's arm shattered. Literally shattered, like glass breaking, and fell away as harmless ash. The curse inside her screamed and died, unable to withstand the combined power of two mates, two wolves, two souls bound so tightly they might as well be one. And then, impossibly, Krista felt her own bones beginning to shift. "No," she gasped. "I can't. I'm wolfless. I've always been. You were never wolfless." Todd's voice echoed in her mind. "You were a healer. The Bass bloodline chose healing over shifting. But the mate bond doesn't care about choices made centuries ago. It makes us equal. It makes us whole." The transformation hurt Moon Goddess. It hurt worse than anything she'd ever felt. Like every bone in her body was breaking and reforming simultaneously. She wanted to scream, but her voice was changing, becoming something between human and animal, and then it was done. Krista stood on 4 legs, her body covered in silver-white fur that gleamed in the amulet's fading light. She could smell everything: the salt and chalk of the ritual circle, the fierce sweat of the watching crowd, the lingering poison of the curse as it evaporated into nothing. She could hear the scholars' gasping prayers, Noelle's joyful sobbing, Raphael's stunned silence. But most of all, she could feel Todd. The bond between them was a living thing now, visible as golden threads that wound around both their wolf forms, binding them together in a way that transcended physical touch. "Hello, mate," Todd's voice purred in her mind, warm with love and triumph and relief. "Hello," Krista thought back, still too stunned to form more complex thoughts. The black wolf moved closer, nuzzling against her silver-white coat, and Krista felt complete for the first time in her life. Not broken, not lacking, not worthless, just whole, just herself, just enough. The amulet, its purpose fulfilled, cracked down the middle and fell into 2 perfect halves. The light it had contained dispersed into the air like fireflies, settling over everyone in the great hall like a blessing. The curse was broken. Not just suppressed or managed, but utterly destroyed. 500 years of suffering ended in a single moment of absolute love. Slowly, Krista felt herself shifting back to human form. The transformation was easier this time, almost natural, her body remembering how to be both wolf and woman. Todd shifted beside her, and they knelt together in the center of the ritual circle, naked and exhausted and alive. "You did it," Todd breathed, pulling her into his arms. "You broke the curse. You saved us both. We saved each other," Krista corrected, burying her face in his shoulder. She was crying now, great heaving sobs of relief and joy and disbelief. "I have a wolf. Todd, I have a wolf. All these years, she was just sleeping, and you woke her up. She's beautiful," Todd said, pressing kisses to her hair, her forehead, her tear-stained cheeks. "You're beautiful, both of you, all of you, my mate, my healer, my salvation." "Your princess," Krista said, remembering his proposal in the garden. "If the offer still stands." Todd pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "The offer will stand until the day I die. And even then, I'll probably find you in the next life and ask again." He cupped her face in his hands. "Krista Bass, will you be my mate, my partner, my equal in all things? Will you stand beside me as I learn to be the prince I was always meant to be? Will you help me build a kingdom where being different isn't a curse but a gift?" "Yes," Krista said through her tears. "Yes to all of it. Always yes." They kissed then, deep and desperate and full of promise, while the assembled crowd erupted into cheers. Raphael was laughing and crying simultaneously. Gale was scribbling furious notes, muttering about unprecedented magical phenomena. Noelle was jumping up and down, hugging anyone within reach. But Krista heard none of it. She was too focused on Todd, on the bond humming between them, on the impossible miracle of being alive and whole and loved. When they finally broke apart, breathless and grinning, Raphael approached with 2 cloaks to preserve their modesty. "Well," the Alpha King said, his voice thick with emotion, "that was significantly more dramatic than I anticipated. But effective. Very effective." He helped them to their feet. "Welcome to the family, Krista. Officially." "Thank you," Krista said, and meant it with her whole heart. "Now," Raphael's expression hardened slightly. "About Amy Zhang. We need to find her. What she did poisoning you, accelerating the curse, attempting murder, those are crimes punishable by death in this kingdom. She's gone," a guard reported, running into the great hall. "Her chambers are empty. She left sometime in the night, took a horse from the stables. By now she could be halfway to the border. Let her go," Todd said, surprising everyone. "Todd, she tried to kill you both," Raphael protested. "And she failed," Todd said simply. "Because love was stronger than her schemes. Chasing her down, putting her on trial, executing her, none of that changes what happened here. We won. The curse is broken. Krista is alive. I have my wolf. That's all that matters." "He's right," Krista added softly. "Amy was desperate and jealous and made terrible choices. But in a way, she forced us to confront the curse sooner, to take the leap of faith we might have delayed otherwise. I'm not grateful for what she did, but I'm grateful for where we ended up." Raphael studied them both, then slowly nodded. "Very well. We'll send word to the border guards to watch for her, but we won't actively pursue. Though if she ever sets foot in this kingdom again, she'll face justice." He squeezed Todd's shoulder. "You're becoming wise, my son. It suits you." They spent the rest of the day in Todd's chambers, now their chambers, Krista supposed, recovering from the ritual's intensity. Healers came and went, checking them for lingering curse effects and finding nothing. Just 2 healthy, whole, impossibly lucky people who had gambled everything and won. "Tell me about your wolf," Todd said as they lay together in his massive bed, tangled in soft sheets in each other's arms. "What does she feel like?" "Wild," Krista said after a moment of consideration. "Like she's been caged for 24 years and is desperate to run. But also, peaceful. Like she knows she's finally where she belongs. She likes you, by the way. Your wolf. They're already bonded." "Of course they are," Todd said with a smile. "They've been waiting centuries to meet. The curse kept us apart, but it couldn't stop destiny. We were always meant to find each other, to save each other, to complete each other." "Do you really believe in destiny?" Krista asked. "Or do you think we just got lucky?" "I think," Todd said slowly, "that destiny is what we make of the opportunities we're given. You could have run when your father brought you here. Could have taken the gold and disappeared. But you stayed. You fought for me. You believed in us when everyone else saw only obstacles. That's not luck. That's choice. The best choice either of us ever made." Krista pressed closer, breathing in his scent, pine and leather, and something uniquely Todd. "I love you," she said. "I know I said it during the ritual, but I need you to hear it when I'm conscious and lucid and choosing to say it. I love you, Todd Hawkins. Wolfless or wolf, cursed or free, I would choose you in every lifetime." "I love you too," Todd said, his arms tightening around her. "My broken healer. My silver wolf. My mate. Thank you for teaching me that being different isn't a curse. It's just another way of being extraordinary." They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other, the mate bond glowing softly in the darkness like a nightlight guiding them home. Outside, the moon rose full and bright, blessing 2 people who had dared to rewrite a 500-year-old story. And in the morning, they would start building their new life together. Chapter 8, The Healing Temple. 1 year later, the Royal Healing Temple stood on the eastern edge of the castle grounds, built from white stone that gleamed in the morning sun. It had been Krista's idea, a place where those who had been called broken, defective, or worthless could come and learn that they were none of those things, just different, just extraordinary in their own way. She stood in the main hall now, watching as a group of young children practiced their shifting. Most were what the old ways would have called wolfless, slow shifters, partial shifters, those whose wolves came late or not at all. But under Krista's guidance, they were learning that the absence of a wolf didn't mean the absence of worth. "Remember," she called out, moving between them, "your power isn't defined by how well you shift or how fast or how completely. Your power is in knowing who you are and refusing to let anyone tell you otherwise." A small girl, no more than 7, with bright red hair and freckles, raised her hand tentatively. Miss Krista? What if my wolf never comes? What if I'm broken forever? Krista knelt beside her, recognizing the fear in those young eyes. She'd worn that same fear for 24 years. Then you'll find other gifts. Other strengths. I didn't have my wolf until I was 24 years old, and you know what? I survived. I learned. I found purpose in healing instead of hunting. And when my wolf finally did come, she was all the stronger for having waited. But everyone says, everyone is wrong, Krista said firmly but gently. Listen to me, all of you. She stood, addressing the whole group. The world will try to tell you what you should be, what you should look like, how you should shift, what your worth is measured by, but the world doesn't get to decide that. You do. Each of you has gifts that no one else possesses. Each of you is exactly who you're meant to be, and anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. The children nodded solemnly, absorbing the lesson. Krista felt a familiar warmth bloom in her chest. The satisfaction of making a difference, of ensuring that no child ever felt as alone and worthless as she once had. All right, she said, clapping her hands together. Let's try the meditation exercise again. Close your eyes. Breathe deeply. Feel for your wolf, but don't force it. Just listen. Sometimes our wolves speak in whispers, not roars. As the children settled into meditation, Krista felt arms wrap around her waist from behind. She leaned back into Todd's embrace, smiling as his chin rested on her shoulder. You're incredible with them, he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. They hang on your every word. They just need someone to believe in them, Krista said. The way you believed in me. The way we believed in each other, Todd corrected. He turned her in his arms so they were facing each other. How are you feeling? Any nausea today? Krista's hand went instinctively to her stomach, still flat, but not for much longer. A little. But the healer says that's normal. Everything is progressing exactly as it should. Todd's face lit up with the same wonder and joy that had appeared a month ago when Krista had told him she was pregnant. Pregnant. The woman who had been told she was barren, who had built her entire identity around the impossibility of bearing children, was going to be a mother. It's still a miracle, Todd said softly, his hand covering hers on her stomach. Every single day I wake up and can't believe this is real, that you're real, that we're having a child. The curse breaking must have healed that part of me too, Krista said, though the healers still didn't fully understand how. Or maybe the mate bond. Or maybe you were never actually barren, Todd suggested. Maybe that was just another lie told by people who wanted to make you feel small. Your PAX healer examined you when you were 18 and had just been rejected. She probably saw what she expected to see. What everyone assumed about a wolfless woman. Maybe, Krista agreed. It didn't really matter now. What mattered was the life growing inside her, the impossible made possible, the dream she'd never dared to dream coming true. Miss Krista? One of the older students, a boy named Curtis Brady, approached hesitantly. There's a woman here to see you. She says she's a bass. Says she's family. Krista's breath caught. In the year since the curse had been broken, several distant relatives had emerged, branches of the Bass family that had scattered and hidden centuries ago, now hearing that it was safe to claim their heritage again. But something about Curtis's expression made her wary. Show her in, Krista said. The woman who entered was small and elderly, with white hair pulled into a severe bun, and eyes so pale they were almost colorless. But Krista recognized her immediately from the portrait her mother had kept hidden, her grandmother, who had supposedly died when Krista was a baby. Grandmother? Krista whispered. Shocked. Hello, child, the woman said, her voice papery and dry. I'm sorry for the deception. I've been alive all this time, living in hiding, waiting for the right moment to reveal myself. Why? Krista demanded, anger warring with confusion. Why let me think you were dead? Why let me suffer alone? Thinking I was the last one. Because you needed to be desperate, her grandmother said simply. The curse could only be broken by someone who had nothing to lose. Someone so broken that healing another was the only purpose left. If you'd known you had family, had support, had options, you might never have been willing to sacrifice everything for the prince. The casual cruelty of it stole Krista's breath. You manipulated me. Used me. Let me believe I was worthless so I'd be more willing to die. I ensured the curse would be broken, her grandmother corrected. 500 years of suffering ended because you were brave enough to give everything. You should be proud. Get out, Todd said, his voice cold as winter. Get out of this temple and off these grounds. Krista owes you nothing. She owes me everything, the grandmother snapped. I'm the reason. You're the reason she spent 24 years thinking she was defective, Todd interrupted. The reason she was rejected, abused, and sold like property. Whatever your intentions, whatever grand plan you thought you were executing, it doesn't excuse the damage you did. Now leave, before I have you forcibly removed. The grandmother looked at Krista, seeming to expect her to intervene. But Krista just stared at her. This woman who had let a child suffer for the sake of an ancient grudge, and felt nothing but pity. He's right, Krista said quietly. You manipulated me, used me, but you know what? I'm grateful you did, because it led me here. To Todd, to my wolf, to this life where I can help children who feel as lost as I once did. You thought you were controlling my destiny, but all you did was push me toward the place I was always meant to be. So thank you, I suppose. And goodbye. The grandmother's face twisted with anger, but she left without another word. As the door closed behind her, Krista sagged against Todd, trembling. That was remarkably restrained, Todd said, holding her close. I was ready to shift and chase her out myself. She's not worth the energy, Krista said. And she's wrong. Anyway, I didn't break the curse because I had nothing to lose. I broke it because I had everything to gain. A life worth living. A person worth dying for. A future worth fighting for. Well said. A familiar voice called from the doorway. Gail Hudson entered, followed by several other scholars, all carrying books and scrolls. And speaking of your future, we've been researching the pregnancy. Given your unique circumstances, the curse breaking, the late wolf emergence, the mate bond, we wanted to ensure there wouldn't be any complications. And? Krista asked nervously. And you're going to be fine, Gail said with a warm smile. Better than fine. The baby is healthy, developing normally. But there is something interesting we discovered. She opened one of the ancient texts. The Bass healing bloodline wasn't always exclusive to women. In the earliest records, before the curse, both male and female healers existed. The limitation to women was a side effect of the curse, a way to ensure the bloodline would slowly die out. But the curse is broken, Todd said slowly. Exactly. Which means your child, whether boy or girl, could inherit the healing magic, could become the first male Bass healer in 5 centuries, or could have both the healing magic and a wolf, something that hasn't existed since before the curse. Krista's hand went to her stomach again, wonder blooming in her chest. Our child could have both? It's possible, Gail said. We won't know for certain until they're born. But the precedent is there in the old records. The Bass family was meant to be powerful in multiple ways. The curse limited them. But now that limitation is gone. Your child represents a new beginning. The restoration of what was lost. After the scholars left, Krista and Todd walked through the temple gardens together. It was early evening, the sun painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. They paused by the memorial she'd built, a simple stone engraved with the names of every Bass healer who had died in the original massacre, 500 years ago. They'd be proud of you, Todd said, reading the names. Of what you've built here. How you've transformed their tragedy into hope. I hope so, Krista said. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing. Breaking the curse saved you, but it also meant forgiving your family for what they did to mine. Some might call that betrayal. Some might call it wisdom, Todd countered. The curse was perpetuating suffering on both sides. Breaking it freed everyone, my family, from wolflessness. Yours from hiding and fear. That's not betrayal. That's healing on the deepest level. They continued walking until they reached the back of the temple, where a small cottage stood, their private residence, away from the castle's politics and pressures. It was simple, with a garden that Krista tended herself, and a porch where they'd sit in the evenings and watch the sunset. You got your cottage, Todd observed as they climbed the porch steps. And your garden. Everything you dreamed of. Plus a prince, a castle, a temple, and a baby on the way, Krista added with a laugh. I overshot my goals somewhat. You deserve all of it, Todd said firmly. And more. Speaking of which. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I know we're already mated, already married in the eyes of the pack and the kingdom, but I wanted to give you this. A symbol of everything we've overcome, everything we've built together. He opened the box to reveal a ring, simple silver, set with a black stone shot through with veins of white. Krista recognized it immediately. Is that from the amulet? She asked, tears springing to her eyes. I had the pieces melted down and reformed, Todd confirmed. The amulet saved us, connected us, brought us together. It seemed fitting that you should wear a piece of it always. A reminder of where we came from and how far we've traveled. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and Krista watched it catch the fading light. It was beautiful. Perfect. A symbol of transformation, darkness and light, curse and healing, death and life. All woven together into something new. I love it, she whispered. I love you. I love you too, Todd said, pulling her into his arms. My broken healer. Except you were never really broken, were you? Just becoming. Just waiting for the right moment to bloom. 3 months later. The Royal Healing Temple was packed with people, students, their families, scholars, nobles, and common folk alike. They'd all come to hear Krista speak at the temple's first anniversary celebration. She stood on a small stage, her pregnancy now obvious in the curve of her belly, and looked out at the sea of faces. A year ago, she began, her voice clear and strong. I was brought to this castle as a last resort, a desperate attempt to save a dying prince. I was wolfless, barren, rejected, and broken. Or so everyone told me. Or so I believed. She paused, letting the words sink in. But I wasn't broken. I was just different. Just powerful in ways that didn't fit into neat categories. Just extraordinary in my own way. She gestured to the children sitting in the front row, her students, all of them making progress in their own time, in their own way. These young people have been told the same lies I was told. That they're defective, that they're worthless, that they'll never be enough. But we're here to tell them, to tell everyone, that those lies end now. Being different isn't a curse. It's a gift. And we're going to celebrate it, nurture it, and teach the world that there are 1,000 ways to be strong, 1,000 ways to be whole, 1,000 ways to be enough. The crowd erupted in applause. Krista caught Todd's eye where he stood off to the side. Their daughter for the healers had confirmed it just yesterday, sleeping peacefully in a sling against his chest. He smiled at her. That private smile that said, I'm proud of you. I love you. You're changing the world. And maybe she was. One broken person at a time. One student who learned to believe in themselves. One family who stopped seeing difference as defect. One kingdom that learned that strength came in many forms. After the ceremony, as the sun set and the celebration continued around them, Krista and Todd slipped away to their favorite spot in the temple gardens. They sat on a stone bench. Their daughter nestled between them, and watched the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. Tell me the story again, Todd said softly. The one your mother told you. Krista smiled and began to hum the lullaby, the ancient song that had saved them both, had broken a curse, had brought them together across 5 centuries of hatred and pain. But the words she sang now were different from the original verses. These were new, written by her and Todd together, transforming the curse song into something beautiful. What was broken now is mending. What was lost now has been found. What was cursed now receives blessing. Where was silence, hear the sound. Love is stronger than old hatreds. Hope can bloom from ancient pain. What was shattered finds its pieces. What was lost comes home again. Their daughter stirred, making a small cooing sound, and Krista pressed a kiss to her tiny forehead. They'd decided to name her after Krista's mother, a way of honoring the woman who had kept the bloodline alive, who had passed down the lullaby, who had sacrificed everything so that her daughter might one day break the curse. She'll never feel broken, Todd said quietly, his hand covering Krista's where it rested on their daughter's back. She'll grow up knowing she's loved, valued, enough exactly as she is. Whether she has a wolf or healing magic or both or neither. She'll know her worth isn't measured by what she can do, but by who she is. Yes, Krista agreed. She will. And so will every child who comes through these temple doors. We're not just breaking curses, Todd. We're breaking cycles. Ending the lies that have been passed down for generations. Teaching a new way of seeing, of being, of loving. Todd turned to her, his storm-gray eyes soft in the starlight. Do you ever miss it? The simplicity of that life you dreamed of? Just a cottage and a garden and peace? Krista considered this, looking around at the temple they'd built, the students they'd taught, the kingdom they were slowly changing. It was bigger than she'd ever imagined, more complicated, more challenging. But it was also more meaningful, more purposeful, more alive. No, she said finally. Because I learned something important. Peace isn't found in simplicity or isolation. It's found in purpose, in connection, in building something larger than yourself. I thought I wanted to hide away and tend a garden, because I believed that's all I deserved, but I deserve this. We deserve this, a life that matters, a love that transforms, a legacy that outlives us. Well said, my princess, Todd murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. My mate, my partner in revolution. Revolution is a strong word, Krista said with a laugh. Is it? Todd challenged. You're teaching an entire generation that their worth isn't tied to their shifting ability. That healing is as valuable as hunting. That compassion is as important as strength. That's revolutionary, Krista. You're changing the fundamental way our society defines value. If that's not revolution, I don't know what is. Krista leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the weight of their daughter in her arms, the strength of Todd's presence beside her, the mate bond humming contentedly between them. A year ago, she'd been prepared to die, had accepted it as the price of giving her life meaning, of making her existence matter, but she hadn't died. She'd lived. And in living, she'd discovered that she'd always mattered. She'd always been enough. She'd just needed someone to see it, and more importantly, she'd needed to see it herself. Tell me what you're thinking, Todd said, sensing the shift in her emotions through the bond. I'm thinking, Krista said slowly, that being broken was just another word for becoming. We weren't cursed. We were just waiting for each other, waiting for the right moment to transform from what we were told we should be into what we were always meant to be. Todd's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining, their mate marks glowing softly where their skin touched. And now? Now, Krista smiled, pressing her palm to her belly where their impossible child grew. We're teaching the world that healing begins when we stop believing the lies about who we're supposed to be. Together, they sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead, listening to the distant sounds of celebration from the temple. The lullaby played on in Krista's mind, carried by voices old and new, transforming from generation to generation. Some songs, it turned out, were meant to evolve, just like the people who sang them, just like two broken souls who'd found each other across centuries of pain and discovered that love, real, true, unconditional love, was the most powerful